is 7 o'clock on August 1st. This is a regular meeting of the Common Council of the City of Oneonta. Call to order.
Mayor Bennett.
Here.
Councilmember Murphy.
Here.
Mayor Davies. Councilmember Richburger.
Here.
Councilmember Carnation. Here. Councilmember Carson. Here. Councilmember Harrington.
Here.
Councilmember Overby.
Here.
Councilmember Felton. Here.
If you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Folks. Before we begin, we have a couple of presentations. A lot of familiar faces in the gallery. Good to see everybody. Just want to acknowledge the passing of Paul Rubens, aka Pee Wee Herman, as most of you know. For a couple of years, he was a young boy, lived in Oneonta, so we have that connection. And sadly, just a few days ago, I'm very sorry to report that we lost one of the nicest, most civic-minded members of our community. A former council member and airport commissioner, among other things. So I ask you to join me in a moment of silent remembrance and appreciation of Les Grummins. Thank you very much. And with that, we have a couple of presentations. Mayor, can I turn it over to you?
Thank you for that remembrance of Les Grummins. For those of you who didn't have an opportunity to ever get to know Les Grummins, very special person, real gentleman, put community first, always put other people first.
A nice man.
Wonderful, wonderful person, real friend of our own. Okay. First, let me start by, we have, I think, 5 members of the commission who are able to be here tonight. I'd like to ask them to introduce themselves.
David Hayes representing Ward 1, thanks to Luke Murphy.
William Shue, 6th Ward.
Jim Foot, 5th Ward.
Susan Lettuce, 2nd Ward.
Okay. Other members who cannot be here tonight are Lori Zimnowitz of the 3rd Ward, Glenn Pardo of the 7th Ward, and Jeremy Desnosky, Jonathan Desnosky of the 8th Ward. Right. First, I just want to say that the group that you was appointed to be on this commission, you could have done a better job. This was just an outstanding group of people. They took the project with the seriousness it deserved, even though it's a fairly small things in the scheme of things. They respected it as one of the building blocks of democracy and treated it as such. In addition to that, while each member had primary interest of looking out for their own ward that they were there to represent, they also looked at it from a global city perspective. And everybody's concern was what was best for the city of Oneonta, and not just for their individual board. While there were disagreements along the way, it was always respectful, it was always civil, and couldn't have asked for a better group of people to work with, so thank you for that. So we'll try to keep this short. You've all had a copy of the report. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to read it, so we can go through this fairly quickly. Is that the first slide?
Yes, it is.
Sure about that?
I'm not sure.
Not yet. I guess it is. Okay. So this gives you just a brief overview of where we stood in the 2010 census, which is in the first category there, and where we stand in what we are proposing for, based upon the 2020 census, for the plan that we're proposing to take effect hopefully in 2023. Probably the things to notice most on this is that well, first of all, we lost close to 800 people citywide, according to the census from 2010 to 2020. And the 2 wards that were the biggest losers were Wards 8 and Ward 6. between those two wards, there was a loss of approximately 500 of the 800 people that were lost citywide. And that was pretty much evenly divided. Both Ward 6 and Ward 8 lost approximately 250 people each, and we'll talk more about that as we go. And if you have questions, just interrupt me at any point, and I'll stop along the way, just let me know if you have any questions. Thank you. And so the driving law that guided us in the process and is required to guide us is the New York State Home Rule Law, which spells out exactly the stipulations or requirements that we have to follow in the redistricting process. There are 6 criteria that the Home Rule Law outlines. And what is interesting, it took us a little while to wrap our heads around this, is the statement that the 6 standards shall have priority in the order herein set forth. And what that means is that the number one, the standard that's listed as number 1 is the one that you absolutely have to meet. Then, once you meet that, the one that's listed as number 2 is the next one that you're required to meet. Once you meet that, then next, you're not required to meet them all, but you can't jump. You can't say, well, we're not going to meet number 2, but we're going to meet number 3 instead. It has to be, you have to meet them in those priorities. What I am most proud to say is that the commission's work resulted in us meeting all 6 of the standards in our perspective on it. And I think that's an excellent contribution, and I thank the work of the commission for that. So I'm going to briefly go through the 6 criteria. I'm not going to read them in depth, but the first one basically says that this is really about every vote is equal representation, every vote counts the same. The most recent home rule law, which was refined in 2021, became a little harder to meet, stipulates that if you take the median, which is another word for average, if you take the average ward population, and if you take the total population of the city, 13,900, whatever it was, divided by 8, that's your average. And once you take the average of that, and you take 5% of that average, and the largest ward in the city cannot be any more than 5% of that average larger than the smallest ward. That number came out to 81 people. So it meant that the largest ward in the city could not be any more than 81 people larger than the smallest ward in the city. And that's not an easy thing to accomplish. I mean, it took quite a bit of work to do so. So number 2, back up a little bit because there's a couple on that. Number 2, the district shall not be joined with the intent of or result of denying the equal opportunity of racial or language minority groups to participate in the political process. We believe that the final result that we're recommending did not in any way deny or bridge the rights of any groups. Number 3, districts consist of contiguous territory. I think that is true. All of them are contiguous. Number 4, districts shall be as compact in form as practicable. Again, I think the key word here is practicable. There is, I think the 7th ward was one that got a little more stretched out than was previously, but again, trying to meet the requirement of less than 5% of the median between the largest and the smallest. I think it was the best possible solution. So was it as compact as form as practical? We believe so. Number 5, the district shall not be drawn to discourage competition for the purpose of favoring either candidate or political party. And I think we believe strongly that what we're recommending does not favor any one person or party in any way. And then I think the thing that did require a considerable amount of discussion was Also, the interest of communities of interest shall be considered. Now, we gotta learn about how this works and what a community of interest is. But a community interest is a group of people, a community, whether it's geographic, demographic, whether it's based upon age, whether it's based upon, ethnic, racial background, is that nothing that we do should in any way hurt a community of interest in making it harder for them to be represented, making it harder for them to elect someone who represents their interests. And often a community of interest has unique interests. It may be a group of people that are more impacted by potential legislation than the general public is. And it's our responsibility to make sure that nothing we do minimizes. An example would be if you were to take a certain group of people, whatever that group is, and you were to spread them amongst all the wards so there was a relatively small number in each ward, that would mean we were disempowering them from being able to ever elect an elected official that they feel would well represent them because they're so spread out. We defined two communities of interest here in the city of Oneonta. One was the Sixth Ward, and the other was our college students. I'm going to let Bill Shue talk a little bit about, Bill Shue was a champion for that, for the Sixth Ward, as he should have been. The Sixth Ward is a very special place with a very special history, and we respected his strong feelings about it, and why don't you talk a little bit about it?
Thanks. Thank you, Mayor. According to the 2020 census, the Sixth Ward lost somewhere near 250 some people. And when I first saw that figure, a radar went up. It was done during COVID, and there was very little door-to-door canvassing. So I checked it to see if there could possibly be a special partial census done. Yes, you can, but it costs thousands and thousands of dollars. You have to pay for census people, census takers, full-time salaries. You had to pay for office space, and the commission agreed that this is a waste of money. We don't have the money to do that. We thought it was inappropriate to do that. But the Sixth Ward certainly is a community of interest. Almost sounds like a criminal phrase, but it's not. The neighborhood heritage of the Sixth Ward has been known for decades. Many of the founding people who came to rise in the city came from the Sixth Ward. I can safely say that it was the faith of hard work and dedication that many of those people who came into the Sixth Ward made the Sixth Ward what it is, and many of them made what the city is. I went through the list of businesses and organizations in the Sixth Ward that could be impacted by any legislation. Now, we all know that legislation impacts most everybody, but that was one of the criteria in a community of interest. Would certain legislation impact a community of interest? We have major manufacturers in the city, Sixth Ward, Corning and the Moldomatic Corporation. We have Bassett Convenient Care there. We have numerous apartment complexes. We have the Sixth Ward Booster Club, the Sixth Ward Athletic Club, the Boys and Girls Club. All those would be impacted because of who they are and where they are. So I thought that would be a community of interest. The Hampton Inn is in the Sixth Ward. They were affected by the floodplain change, which is legislation. We are home to 3 great restaurants: Al Fresco's, Bella Michael, Dazzo's Kitchen, It's like, wow. Who can forget the Golden Guernsey? Enwell Flooring and Mirabel Fuel, Otsego Dental, Asbury Garden, Riverside School, Swart Wilcox, Doc Knapp, Rich Murphy, Little League Fields. All those things would be affected by any legislation. But the commonality to create a community of interest was, to me, the biggest thing was the neighborhood heritage, blending single-family homes, neighborhood, blending apartments, and blending Nader Towers in the Sixth Ward. The camaraderie of the Sixth Ward is unbelievable. I came from a small town, 1,200 people. You knew what size underwear everybody wore. Your mother would put it on the line. Well, I don't know what size underwear everybody wears, but the commonality and neighborhood is what I would say unbelievable. And it's a great place. I can put a pitch in for the real estate companies. It's a great place to buy a house and rent an apartment. I can attribute that to not just hard work, but as I got to know people, their faith in God is unreal. They believe that powerful things can happen. And they've done that all the way back in the 30s and 40s when you look at the history of Oleander. And I think that is a big factor in a community of interest. I'm not saying that is not in the city of Oneonta, don't get me wrong. It is almost overpowering in the Sixth Ward. And so, community of interest. Thanks for your time.
And so, thank you, Bill. And so we were very careful to make sure that we in no way weaken that community in their ability to elect representatives to look after their interests. It is a very special place. It's a very special history in the city of Oneonta. The other community of interest that we designated were college students. Glenn Picardo championed that. He works up at SUNY. And he couldn't be here tonight, he's out of town, but he did submit a statement, and David has agreed to read it.
I'll read my fellow commissioner's statement in writing here. And I should actually salute the mayor. This has been just a very, I'm not reading the statement now, a very collegial exercise. This commission has just been working well, and we're trying to present you a good work product. So these are Glenn's comments, which I'm reading on his behalf. First, I'd like to commend the great leadership of Gary Herzig and his work as chair of the 2020 Redistricting Commission. His research, communication, and organizational abilities allow the work of the commission to run smoothly and make informed decisions. Secondly, I'd also like to commend the work of City Hall staff, including City Clerk Carrie Harrington, City Attorney David Merzig, and especially the City Manager Greg Mattice. I'm going to pause here. Greg Mattice, so that the council knows, I'm speaking in my own words, is largely the genius with his staff that made these numbers possible. He is the guy who actually crunched these numbers. Getting back to Glenn's statement, and his staff are creating the draft redistricting map that is being submitted to the Common Council. The work on the commission would not have been possible without the excellent work of the city's staff. And that's an accurate statement. As stated in the redistricting report, Harvard and SUNY Oneonta's college students were identified as communities of interest. This designation made it important for the commission to protect college students' rights by making sure their political power in voting was not diminished in any way. The city manager and his staff did a fantastic job of drafting the map the commission is submitting today. There was concern from a commission member, along with 2 Harvard College students, that the map as presently configured, would diminish the political power of on-campus Harvard and SUNY Oneonta students based on the reasons below. 1. First, 1 Harvard College dormitory was assigned to Ward 8, while all the rest of Harvard dormitories were assigned to Ward 5. See the proposed map, which you have in front of you. By having only 1 Harvard dormitory in Ward 8, this may diminish the political power of college students residing in that ward, as they will now potentially be in a district with a majority non-college students. Therefore, The assignment of this one Harper College dormitory into Ward 8 may limit the ability of college students in this dormitory to elect a representative that serves the college students' interest. 2. Secondly, the SUNY Oneonta dormitories were divided into 4 separate wards, 2, 3, 4, 7. The breaking up of SUNY College Oneonta dormitories into 4 separate districts may limit the on-campus students from electing a representative that serves their interests, as they will only have a majority of residents in one district, Ward 7. If, for example, SUNY Oneonta dormitories were divided into two districts, on-campus SUNY Oneonta students would have a majority in 2 wards as opposed to only one, as seen in the proposed redistricting map. Thank you for allowing me to share my comments on this redistricting plan. These are Glenn Pichardo's comments, which I read at the request of the chair.
Thank you, David. Okay, so I guess the elephant in the room regarding the 2020 census is COVID. And how did COVID impact that census? Well, the census was scheduled to begin and did begin on April 1st of 2020. Where were all of our college students on April 1st of 2020? They were not in Oneonta. They were home. They were sent home. The colleges were closed. So that caused considerable concern over an undercount here in the city because almost half of our population are college students. The Census Bureau did something that they've never done before and actually was quite remarkable. With understanding that college communities, the college students were no longer here for the census count, they contacted each of the colleges in the college communities and asked them to provide the Census Bureau with the enrollment of all of the students for each dorm on campus for the spring of 2020 semester. SUNY Oneonta and Harper College both provided those numbers to the Census Bureau. The Census Bureau used those numbers as the count for on-campus students, which means that every single student who was enrolled to live on campus in the spring 2020 was counted in the census. That really saved us from having a very significant undercount. Now, when it came to the off-campus students, the Census Bureau also asked colleges to provide names and addresses of off-campus students. Both SUNY Oneonta and Harper College did not provide that information. One Harper College has very few students living off campus. SUNY Oneonta said that we do not require our students to provide us with that information, to provide us with their address, to provide us with the information of where they're living if they're not living on campus. And for that reason, they were not comfortable providing the information because they didn't know they had accurate information. And they didn't know how many students they had accurate information on that may or may not be accurate. So that means we really don't know how many of the off-campus students were not counted because they were not here and because they went home. We can get a little sense of it because in one place there was a little more clarity was in the 6th Ward. There's a large student complex that's on the south side of the 6th Ward adjacent to Foothills. And we found that the number of students that were counted in that area, and that's the only buildings in that area, in that block, was probably 100 or more students less than was in 2010. Not students, people, I should say. Was probably more than 100 people less than it was in 2010, which tells us that because of the student housing, it probably was a large undercount, and that may be indicative of what happened through the rest of the city where we have students. But we have no way of knowing. So when we look at the fact that we lost 900 residents, 900 residents from 2010, we really don't know if that's real because one, we counted every student who lived on campus. On the other hand, we don't know how many of the off-campus students we lost. So, so the effect is not completely clear. And the impact on year-round residents, again, we don't know the impact. How many people were afraid to open the door in April 2020? This is a census, somebody knocked on the door, take the census, and then remember those days. We didn't want somebody knocking at the door breathing on it. So we don't know what the impact was that day. Okay, one other challenge that we faced was, for some reason, which we don't know what it was, the Census Bureau decided to take the 2020 census and combine what was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or so census blocks on the campus into one block. And they created one block on the right side, that dark blue, and put 2,000 students in. There's no way we can have one census block with 2,000. We can't have one ward with 2,000 people in it. So fortunately, because the colleges have provided the numbers to the Census Bureau, we were able to contact SUNY Army after they provided us with the numbers that they gave the Census Bureau. We knew the locations of the dorms. We were able to break that up and divide it up amongst the various wards. And here you can see on the left is the way it was. That dark blue area contained 2,000 people and all living in dormitories. And on the right, you can take a look at, that's the 2010 census, and you can see how that same area was previously divided amongst wards 7, 3, 4, and 2. And so we managed to redivide them, not exactly how they were before, but amongst the various 4 wards. Harper College, similar problem. The Census Bureau decided to put the entire campus in one census block this time, which was not done previously, and we used the same strategy in dealing with Harper College on that to break it up into some of the students are in Ward 7 and some of the students are in Ward 5. This is just an overview of the census map with all the census blocks, so it's right at 2020. This is the current ward map, which you were all very familiar with. And this is the proposed ward map. And again, I want to thank Greg for his work on this, his knowledge, expertise with GIS, enabled him to take the requirements, the vision that the commission had, and turn it into a real map. And not only we got a great service for the commission, he saved the city about $16,000, but it would cost to hire a consultant to do that. I think he already spent that on something else, but that's okay. He's on it. So this is the map. You've probably had a chance to take a look at it. You have copies of it in front of you. You can see that the most significant changes are the 6th ward, because it had lost about 250 people, needed to expand its geographic area. That was done by going north across the railroad tracks and up to and including the south side of Chestnut Street, and going east across the Neola Park. It included some of what was previously the 1st ward. Does stretch it out a little bit, but you know, on the other hand, when you look at it, it really looks like a lower deck. So we thought it was a good solution. Some of the other, none of the wards were unchanged. All wards had changes, but the greatest changes were to the 1st ward losing some of its geography to the 6th ward, the 5th ward losing some of its geography to the 6th ward, and also gaining more of the college students to compensate for that. So that is the proposed map. We think it's a good map, and we're hoping that you will adopt it. Questions on it?
Council, questions? Comments?
There may be another slide, I'm not sure.
I do have one question.
Yeah.
I think this is a phenomenal map. I was
crunching the numbers, I think my ward changed by 2 people, which is phenomenal considering there's 13,000 in the city. One question I had was, how were areas that had 0 population handled? For example, well, the one that is really in my ward that juts in over the creek is block 1005. Is there a rationale why that part was?
The park there, you're talking about Wilbur Park?
Yeah.
You know, Wilbur Park was traditionally always in the 2nd ward. So the commission decided that there was no reason to move it into the 1st ward because it was traditionally always in the 2nd ward, even though some of the surrounding area was being moved out of the 1st ward into the 2nd ward. So there are no people living in Wilbur Park, so it has 0 impact upon anything. It doesn't mean a thing. All it is a color on the map. But the commission saw that there was no justification for moving the park from one ward to the other because it served no purpose, it had no impact, and it was always been in that location, and why move something that there's no need to move? Was there, David disagreed with that strongly, and but his reasons were just he didn't like the way the map looked, but there was a little bulge there, and David is a very graphically oriented visual person. But that there was just it has no impact whatsoever because nobody lives there. There was no reason to move it from one location to a new location.
Can I add to that, please? Do you mind if I just?
Go, please,
amend
go
what
ahead,
Jeff said?
Susan.
So the criteria, we really had to stick to the criteria provided by the state statute, and that's a current political subdivision, that boundary, so you need a reason to change it. So, the gentleman from Ward 1 tried diligently to change it, but he failed multiple times.
Sounds like we need to go back and watch the videos.
In my defense, I like clean lines, and I think, to speak seriously, I think the stream forms a natural boundary, is all, with respect to my fellow commissioner.
Let's let rehash that.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yes, Ed.
Doesn't Wilbur Park straddle the stream to a certain extent?
I believe it does, and there may
So
be.
you wouldn't really get a clean line?
I think you're correct, and I think the stream is the boundary there, and I think there may be a little part of the park that's over on the other ward. Is that what your take on it, Craig?
Yeah, there's a portion of the park
Yeah.
that's
And,
the first one.
Yeah. But none of it means a thing, because there's no people there.
Further questions, Council?
Go ahead, David.
Any other questions, comments?
We have one more, I think. So just a couple of additional considerations and part of recommendations from the commission. One is that you should be aware that the county completed their redistricting process and had their plan approved on time and is in effect at this time. The county uses the city ward boundaries to define their district, which means that we are now proposing to change the city ward boundaries. That means that it will no longer represent the boundaries that are part of the county's redistricting plan. Those districts will change. What impact that will have on the county's weighted voting, I don't know. Maybe there's a chance that the numbers are so small that it won't change their weighted voting, but it probably will. So, there was a communication breakdown between the county and the city, and we're not going to get into he say, she say, or who didn't communicate, but it's an important recommendation is that the city proactively now, once a new plan is approved, contact the county, work closely with the county on whatever it is that they will have to do to revise their current district to be redefined to meet the new boundaries, and how that changes may or may not change their numbers and change their way to vote. So that will be. And then The other consideration was the commission was unanimously concerned that because the commission was appointed late, about a year after the time should have been appointed, that it will now be 4 years before equal representation takes place here in the city of Oneonta. There's no way to get it done in time for the election, which is in 2023, in which all 8 council members will be up for election. And it'll be 4 years until this, I mean, so it's for 4 more years we will have unequal representation. So recommendations from the commission are one, that you know, it's easy to lose track of these things in 10 years. Staff turnover, elected officials certainly turnover. So that just the city administration, whatever tool is used for long-term planning, make sure we get it on that tool calendar. So in 2030, we get it by the time. The other thing that came up in discussion was, would it make a difference? And I'm not sure it would, because we didn't really go into this. But would it make a difference if we had staggered voting and we didn't elect all 8 council members at the same time? We elected maybe 4, and then 2 years later elected 4. We just thought, we didn't really examine what was entailed in that and how it would make a difference or not, but we just thought we would recommend that the council just take a look at that. See if it's something that makes sense. Would it prevent a 4-year delay? I don't know if it would or not in the future, if it were late in getting the redistricting done. But certainly I think almost everybody thinks that it would provide for better continuity of government. I can tell you when I was mayor, 2 councils in a row overturned 6 out of the 8. And it takes 6 months to recover from that, to get people back up to speed. Despite the fact that people blame me for the fact that everybody was leaving, but that's okay. I think we're done. Is that the last? Oh, and big thank yous to Greg Mattice, who I already mentioned, without his GIS ability. We would really have been way behind and have spent a lot more money. And Carrie, well, everybody knows that if you want to get something done in the city, you need Carrie on your side, and she was there for us the whole way and supported us every way that we needed. So big thank yous to both Carrie and Carrie. And I think that's all we have. So if there's questions,
Any
we'll take them.
further
If not,
questions
we'll get out of
or
here.
comments, Len?
Mayor, thank you for leading this committee. Much appreciated in the hard work, and I thank the fellow committee members for the hard work. I know that sounds like you guys had some lively discussions, which is good, actually. It's great that you had those. That means that everybody was fairly represented. It is very important work that you guys did do. My question is, you couldn't be more than 5% difference between each ward, is that correct?
No, between the largest and the smallest.
The largest and the smallest.
You have to be more than 5%, 81 people, between the smallest ward and the largest.
So if we were concerned about the county representatives, so District 11 through 12, 13, and 14, so if we took wards 1 and 2 for District 11, and we compared that to District 13, wards 5 and 6, there wouldn't be more than 5% difference?
Correct.
Okay.
But there could be more than 5% difference from what they drew up. They took the old boundary and the new population in the old boundary. We don't know what that is because we didn't bother calculating that. So how much of a difference that makes in the realm of the county, whether it throws off their weighted voting, I have no idea. But it's certainly something that has to be looked at because they have to redefine. It's going to change the number of people that in each of their districts from what they currently have as the number of people.
Correct.
In each of the districts, and that is likely to throw off their weighted voting.
I think it will, because when I'm looking at 1 and 2 and then say 5 and 6, there's a definite difference and it would affect the weighted voting.
So that's something that the cities need to work closely with the county and rectify.
Further questions?
Looking through the agenda, I don't see a motion unless I'm missing it. When does the council take action on this?
Well, we're,
Oh,
yeah, it's a ways away.
okay.
This is
But
a
we will be-
recommendation from the council, this is a recommendation from the committee to the council. Council now has the obligation to adopt, amend, do whatever it wants with this, and then to implement to ultimately implement the modification. The commission could not do that, they could simply put it together and then make a recommendation to the council.
Right, okay.
That's what this is.
Thank you.
We'll be bringing this to the agendas of a couple of meetings as we probably get into early part of September.
What was that? I'm sorry, that was
Early
part?
part of September. we'll
okay,
bring
thank
this
you.
to
Thank you.
the agenda. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, just quickly, thank you, Commission, for your work on this and for allowing me to help out with that. I also just wanted to throw out a shout out to Maureen Seymour and engineering who really did the mapping. I did the Excel stuff and she made it into something that was easily understandable by everyone. And along those lines, we have this map, Gary explained tonight, it has all the census data, each block labeled. After this meeting, we'll put it on the website, share with the media, a little bit simpler version of that, but if you're just looking for where your street is and what ward you would be in the future, it'll make that a little bit clearer. So we'll have two versions of the map.
Greg has created, which was a smart thing to do, a version that is simpler graphically for the public to look at, has less of the information. We wanted to present an official map, but I think Greg's idea of creating something that is easier to see graphically is good.
Understanding the important piece here is that the boundaries of the wards will not change through these next 4 months. As we do have people who are running for election in different wards, those wards will stay intact through these next 4 months, just to be clear on that.
I think you have to consult with David on what is the impact of when this is approved and what the impact is.
Yeah, this can't be, it cannot be implemented in such a way that it changes the current boundaries for the current Alderman. So none of your wards will ever change during your current period of time you're in office. Whatever we implement, whatever this council implements, it will go into effect at the end of an election cycle. So that when someone votes, we'll change the boundaries effective January 1 after the next election. So you can't, none of your wards will ever change as long as you're running it. But once we pass it, we'll pass it so it becomes effective, that the election will occur prior to the effective date of the new shapes. So that when the January 1, it'll change and will be in effect. That makes sense? Or am I got it wrong? Did we change it first? I can't remember anything. I'm pretty sure we changed it. We put it in effect so when the people vote, so when the people vote in November, they're going to be voting for a new ward.
Good for you, Claire.
Oh, yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Well, I want to just thank you folks for the work that you did. Is just
I promised 15 minutes, it took much longer than that, so I'm sorry for that.
So thank you very much, folks.
Okay, thank you all, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We appreciate the trust you put in the commission to take on this responsibility. We thank you for that.
Thank you.
So we have here Steve DePerrier, did I pronounce that correctly?
Very well.
From the Burke Group, who'll make a presentation to us on the current status of a salary study.
And are those documents on that same, or,
I can make them, absolutely.
great, I know each of you have them, but if it's up there, I'll probably,
Which packet do you want to start with?
CSEA or? Yeah. And I'll just give a little bit of background on who we are. Burke Group is a human resource consulting firm, do primarily compensation consulting, but also we're in the pension administration business, and we administer 403B, 401K. We have about 18 professionals in Rochester, and we basically serve New York State from Albany to Buffalo and parts north and south from there. We also do a lot of work for, and I apologize, should I go to one of the sides so I don't have my back to these folks?
You're fine.
And
Yeah, why don't I do that? We do a lot of counties in New York State. It's really sort of how we got started in this business. And we do Otsego and Schoharie and a bunch of others down this way. We do probably about 4 or 5 cities like Ithaca, Cortland as well. And so I'm going to walk through, and I can walk through this relatively quickly. Do you want me to use that, or can you do? You
tell me next slide and I will move on.
Okay, let's go through, and I can go through this relatively quickly. You know, the background objectives, and we looked at this for the CSCA group, the administrative group, and then we collected data for the firefighters and the police. We are going to also, we can look at the elected officials. The data is a little harder to obtain and have some consistency with, but we can do that, and I've talked to Greg about that. Essentially, our objectives were to collect this data from reasonable sources to provide the city with information so that when they go through the collectively bargained process, they have good data to review when they look at that. If you can go to the next, just a little bit of what compensation objectives are. Basically, any effective compensation program involves looking at the external competitiveness of the program, the idea of internal equity. When we look at the positions that are grouped together based on the market information, does that make sense to us as the individuals running the city operation? And then they go in a hierarchy, obviously, of grades. And I will say this, that the cities and counties of New York State continue to use sort of a step system. So, you know, typically when we look at a grade, there's about 5 steps that occur. Step 1 is when you come in to that role. Step 5 or 6 is obviously after those numbers of years of service. So that's the hierarchy. Obviously, it's a basis for communicating with employees to say, you know, how are we determining what is market? So going through an exercise like this with some frequency, you know, I think the counties for the longest time were doing this about once every 7 or 8 years, which is, I think, too long a period of time. That's not to say they didn't do some things in the interim to make sure they were consistent with market, but usually you look at this about once every 3 years, and a lot of times it surrounds the collectively bargained process as well. So you go to the next slide. This is an important slide. This is sort of where we get the information. ERI is the largest database that's used in the United States. It allows us to go into this market being the counties, the contiguous counties. The Greater Rochester Chamber of Commerce does a survey. It goes pretty far east to Syracuse, pretty far west to, you know, Buffalo, and those parts south. We use it more for benefit information than we do wage, but there's some good information there. The DOL and the Bureau of Labor Statistics are the other great sources. And then the other one, which is probably the best source, is the county database. So NISAC does that annual survey, and we basically identify these counties as appropriate counties for us to look at in this database. We also look at, you know, the size and the revenue. And I'll spend a little bit of time on this analysis, and then it'll be relatively quick to go through those other ones. But if you can go to the next slide. So, we look at every position within the CSCA group, and we're providing that information. The slides in the blue, those columns represent the 5 steps that I was alluding to. So at step 1, that initial entry level into the position, and then through step 5. When we looked at the market through those sources that we have identified, those various survey sources, we identified a market hire rate. So the market hire rate would theoretically be where we're bringing individuals into that position. And then the market median rate is really sort of after 5 years, what does that look like? So when we go through and we look at this for every grade, and obviously I'm not going to go through the details, but I want everybody to understand the concept that when we look at those in a grade 1 and we compare the market hire rate, when we compare your hire rate to the market hire rate, we're at 75% of that hire rate, okay? Now, we're not looking to try and get to 100%, but we're probably easily, 10 to 15% below when we do this comparison. When Otsego went through, they found they were 15% below market when they went through and did that. They're in the process of going through the exercise to sort of narrow that gap, but the idea that when we look at the higher rate, both the higher rate and sort of the market median rate, we're probably somewhere, and if we go to a couple slides ahead, Carrie, to page 9, I believe. Yes. Okay. This looks at all the grades within CSEA and identifies where we are, okay? And when we look at all 13 grades, we're at 80%, meaning we're 80% of what the market is for those positions. And when we go out to step 5, and it varies based on level, we're roughly at 73%, okay? So, yeah, clearly we are below market, and we are, comparing this obviously to those other counties, those other positions. So I feel like we have a reasonable comparison of what is market. And, the purpose of this analysis is really to give the city information as they go through CSEA, the administrative group, the police, and the firefighters group. So let me stop there and ask if there are questions, and then I'll go through sort of the administrative group. And obviously you have the information in front of you, and I'll spend a little bit more time with the police and firefighters. Yes?
The market hire rate, so are you saying that's the average hire rate within the groups that you were looking at?
Correct. Yeah.
And then the median rate is the dead, taking all the different hire rates, is the dead center one.
5 years into that, which people will ask, okay, is 5 years a reasonable amount of time for a median? And it's probably 5 to 7 years, but most steps that counties and cities use is either 5 or 6 steps. So I think comparing that that 5th step to median is probably appropriate, but yes, we are low.
Additional questions?
So the counties listed are the only counties that you receive data from?
Correct. They're the counties that we felt were reasonable comparators to Oneonta. So they're, I would describe them as similar in revenue size, maybe, to this region. Similar in, as far as competing for these positions. The counties are, for many of those positions in both the CSEA and the administrative group, are who we're really competing with for talent. So we try to stay to counties within the area that we felt, because part of it is people are willing to travel a certain amount, but the thing I've found is I've done this work for 40 years in New York State. People are driving more for an opportunity that pays more money, an opportunity that is a better career option for them, and we're seeing that. You're probably seeing that in where we lose people and where people come to Oneonta to work from other places. So it's what we think is a reasonable comparator for these positions. So some of it's contiguous counties, some of it's similar counties in size or in the region. I think for those positions, it's probably a reasonable comparator. And when we looked at the other information from the survey data, it reinforced that data coming out of the county as well. So we had some parity, which to me reinforces that we have a pretty good handle on what the market is.
And you don't dive down into the tax base.
We look at the revenue number, which would that be a derivative of the tax base to a certain extent?
I just know that our tax base is about 47%, but compared to these other counties that you're suggesting, it's definitely different. And so I was just wondering if you look at tax base. I understand the revenue aspect, and I was gonna turn to Ginny. I noticed that you had made an assumption of 25 million in revenue for 22, and I don't believe we were at 25, but.
Where are we at? Or is it within 3 to 4 million?
Yes.
Okay. Because the brackets that we use are 5 million, so if it's within that, the data's not gonna change.
Okay.
But it's a good point.
Other questions?
I'll just go through the administrative group a little bit, just because it's slightly different. So if we go a couple more slides, again, the same idea, same assumptions that we're using here. If we go one more. So it's a little different for the administrative group. We identify these sort of hiring base ranges, and we sort of go through that exercise. And we're doing the same thing over on the right. We're identifying what is a higher rate and what is the market median rate. And so we're going through looking, and you know, the good thing here is we compare position descriptions, your position descriptions, to position descriptions that are provided for these other surveys and counties. And so we have a really good match for these positions. And if we go to the summary page, which, one more, okay. So this is where we sort of look at where we are as far as that hire rate. And we clearly, for the administrative group, you know, that market hiring rate compared to the sort of the range minimum of where we are, we're in a better position with this group. And then the market median, you see there as well. But clearly, you know, it's the same idea. We're trying to get to somewhere around 90 to 100% of the market, and we're certainly, we see it in a couple situations. My guess is if you look at the data, you'll see that those positions where we are close to the market, it was the realities of the market that we faced. We had to be close to the market to get that. Like when you see some of the waste treatment positions and some of the more technical positions, those are ones where we have to be at market or we're not going to get qualified individuals when we go through that. All right. Is there one more? Oh, and I didn't mention this in the document. We did look at the longevity issue, and clearly I think when we look at longevity for these two groups, we're in a pretty good position with the administrative group. Not in as good a position on the CSEA group, so it's something that we just want to be aware of when we go into those negotiations. But clearly having current data, and this is data as of, you know, where we are today, I think will be helpful. Okay. I want to turn to the police and firefighters for a moment. Maybe we'll do police. Great. Okay. So again, what we're doing here is we've identified sort of Oneonta's hiring base range. Okay. And we have that for police officers, the sergeants, police lieutenants, and the police chief. What we've done here is we've looked at a number of peer cities, and these would be cities similar in size, maybe where we're competing. You know, you see Vestal, Norwich, Cortland. You know, getting back to this idea of how far people are willing to travel. We tried to identify peer cities that were similar in revenue size, maybe where, you know, we're competing with them for police officers, and then obviously the county sheriffs with the peer county data is another really good source. So again, what we see here is when we compare, you know, our hiring base range, you know, for police officers at 42,000, we see among the peer cities and the peer counties, and this is my point that was raised earlier on the county data, you know, there's reasonable parity between the peer cities and the counties, which leads me to believe, hey, we've got a pretty good sense of what the market is for those positions. You see the same for obviously the sergeants and the lieutenants. So again, this looks to me to be reasonable data, but again, it's one where obviously we're asking a great deal of these individuals, and we need to try and be within some reasonable proximity of market. I did put a brief comparison on the longevity, and it looks to me like, at least for the police group, we're in a reasonable position with regard to the longevity. I just put some years down there so we have a sense of that. Somebody wanted to understand what the number of steps in the peer cities were. Most of them are at 5, but some of them go to 7, so you see an average of 6.2, but I'd say most are in that 5 range, so where you are with your 5 steps probably makes some sense. And so I think, again, this is good data for us to have as we go into these collectively bargained exercises. I want to talk to the firefighters real quick too, because this is one where, you know, it's challenging. You know, where we get the data is an analyst goes and looks at the actual contracts that have been identified. And, you know, again, it's not perfect. We identified these peer cities. I know there are other cities that would be good comparators for us, but we only are going to show it if we know with some certainty where that data is. A lot of times these contracts are contracts that were approved 7 years ago and they've just applied some aging factor to them, versus we see a contract that says this is a 23 contract, here are the 5 steps. So we're limited in some of the data that we can get on this, but this is the data from those peer cities, and again, they have 6 steps, and here is where, again, I think in this circumstance, you know, our longevity benefit is an advantage that we have, but again, there's a difference between, you know, that hiring rate and where Oneonta is. And I will say, we went through and did this with Otsego County, and they were in a similar position, and they are going through that exercise right now to try and narrow some of those gaps. All right, let me stop and ask if there are questions or comments to this.
Questions? See if we can keep on going.
That's the last one. I did want to talk, maybe Greg, your thoughts. You know, the elected officials and the council members. We can collect that data, and we can collect it sort of in a similar way to what we've done, like with the police officers. Is that probably the best way for us to gather that information? Because we can. It's not as clean with, you know, we go back actually to the minutes. And we get that information, so it's not as readily available, but we can get it, and we owe that to you as part of this exercise that we went through. My only question was, what's the timing on that?
I mean, that, you know, obviously we're not negotiating anytime soon with our elected officials, but
When's the election?
this fall. But, you know, it was just, the intent was to look at the whole
Yeah,
city. That's
understood.
Included elected officials, you know, to break down to every employee. So I don't think there's any hard deadline on that, but, you know.
We'll get you that information,
We'll talk.
and yeah, but we'll provide that as part of this exercise.
City administrator.
Oh,
Yeah, no, I included that with that group, and actually that's easier to get.
That's included with the electeds group,
Okay.
you're saying?
It will be, yeah.
Do you have a timeline on, can you break it out? Electeds is probably not as important to us as.
We can get that to you probably within the next 2 weeks.
Appreciate that.
Okay? We'll do it just gives me a list of that group, so I have. Okay.
Further questions, folks? Well, Steve, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very
Thank you.
Steve.
Where'd David go? I told him I was gonna auction off this to the highest bidder, but now that I've looked at it, I'm taking it home.
All right, before we move into our public hearing, let me ask, thank you again. We have some folks here, and I wonder if they're here to speak in our petitioners section of our meeting. If there is, this will be a great time. If there is, okay. In that case, in terms of public hearings, we have a public hearing before the mayor to receive comments on the ordinance creating Section 94 buildings demolition of the code of the city of Oneonta. This ordinance was laid on July 3rd, 2023, and approved by the Common Council on July 18th, 2023. Have we anyone here to speak on that? And it doesn't appear that that's the case. So thank you very much. We'll close that out. If the council will allow, I think I'm going to move my remarks up because we still have one or two folks that aren't typically with us. So how nice to have an audience. So my remarks, which would typically follow the city administrator's report, I'm going to move up to precede our boards and commissions reports, if you guys don't mind. All right. As for you folks that are joining us here, I'm a cheerleader. And I'm accused on occasion of being too much of a cheerleader and painting too rosy a picture of where we are and where we're going. But when you're talking about this city, in this moment, I don't think you can be too much of a cheerleader. Obviously, we have our issues to deal with, and we are. But while we invest ourselves in their solution, I believe we need to take a moment to review and appreciate all that's been going right lately. A dozen or so members of the Oneonta community feeling empowered and supported enough to try put on a resource fair at the foothills. Dozens of tables, hundreds of participants, Narcan trainings throughout. They did that. We didn't do that. But with the rest of the community, we supported it. And it was great to see the fire and police and several of our council members there. This is good stuff on a number of levels. So we knew it was coming, but it was still a shock. Razzle Dazzle closed after nearly 50 years. And we will miss Deb North. I will miss Deb North. But it opens a wonderful spot for Shakedown Street. And they're going to do great there. And in a couple of weeks, Dasha, Oneonta's first cannabis dispensary, will have their grand opening. Very interested, as I'm sure we all are, in how their success will positively impact the city's finances and the number of additional visitors and shoppers and diners they'll attract to Oneonta. This is all very positive stuff. But in a couple of weeks, on August 15th, I'll be focusing my remarks on several concerning issues, very much on the minds of our constituents, and rightly so, and detailing some plans to address them. None are easy, and they're all important and daunting. Tonight, however, I want to take this opportunity to inform you and the community about several more positive developments that should be noted and celebrated. Starting with this weekend's Blenderama 3-on-3 basketball tournament on Main Street. Nice job, Cam Hayes. By sheer numbers, the event was incredibly successful, 3 times larger than last year. Players and spectators filled every nook of Main Street, every nook and cranny, and they all found parking. I toured the lots and streets, and as full as downtown was, we had plenty of open spots. Based on my informal poll of merchants and restaurants, most of them had average to below average days, and some were way down. Some, the weekend was like the best one ever. That said, we'll need to look closely for where that might be staged next year. What's inarguable, though, is that downtown Oneonta looked great, and the community loved it. Plus, we got some terrific video and stills to use in our marketing. I posted a rough video on social media on Saturday that's already gotten more than 500 views. So even if folks weren't downtown, there's a lot of shared documentation and an increasing appetite for just how exciting and vibrant Oneonta can be. We're going to be successfully competing with other municipalities, not to mention the box stores and Amazon. A visit to Oneonta needs to be an experience, a positive experience. And this helped that cause. Also helping has been the organic growth of entertainment and engagement activities being offered in Muller Plaza. In the past couple of weeks, we've had line dancing, a chess tournament, musicians. Start's been there a couple of times with kids' games and activities. On our hottest days, and we had a few of those, we've had impromptu water features, garden pose variety, right? But very popular. Several of our Saturdays have featured Jamaican barbecue. And there's more being scheduled. We got a dance class and photo sessions, a drumming circle, an embroidery class, and a paper kite making workshop. For our intern, applications are coming in daily. Fordue has been wonderful, not only for running things seamlessly and without issue, but also for being real ambassadors for the city, providing information to locals and visitors. Every restaurant in the city is listed in menus at the tables with QR codes to their websites for easy ordering. And more folks are using the plaza to eat, to meet, to socialize, and to relax. And all of that is being documented for report to council. But a measure of our success can be found in the drop, I believe, to 0 of police calls to the plaza. And speaking of the police, everyone downtown has been thrilled to see the walking patrols up and down Main Street. It's been great. It's been a difference maker. And of course, the police aren't the only ones walking Main Street this summer. Thanks to the partnership with the Cooperstown All-Star Village, we're seeing a big boost in foot traffic, and for the first time ever, Oneonta is being promoted by Destination Marketing. That's the Otsego County Tourism Bureau, to thousands of followers. Our Engagement Marketing Committee has already begun to institutionalize the relationship, so I would say we are just beginning to tap that potential. Foot traffic is up, and that means that Oneonta is becoming more attractive to business. You may have noticed the former Java Island space is occupied, and a new grocery and convenience store is about to open. I met the owners the other day. Really nice family. They're all moving, all 5 of them, moving into the city. They'll be offering fresh fruits and vegetables and canned and packaged goods, a full deli counter, and hot meals prepared daily. And judging by the reactions on social media, they should do very well. And what a boost to our downtown that's going to be. Another boost to foot traffic and local economy began yesterday when the first tenants signed their leases for apartments in the Dietz Street lots. The building will be nearly full by the end of the month. And yes, we will be monitoring the parking. But by any calculus, adding more than 5 dozen residents and families to downtown is going to have a noticeable effect. Most everyone agrees that we will benefit by the addition of population. And this past week, we got numbers, really good numbers, that provide the best indication yet that we are on the right trajectory. Since April, more than 325 adults have moved into Oneonta. Since April. Now, this isn't a net number, but it's an inarguable indicator of progress. And my hope is that many of those new residents will join us on August 12th, the Welcome Home Block Party on Dietz Street. And of course, we'd all love to see you guys there too. Lots to celebrate, lots to feel good about, and reason to cheer. That is my story, and I'm sticking to it. So with that, unless there's something that somebody wants to say about that, we'll move on to our boards and commission reports. Sound good? Good. All right. So, boards and commissions. Public Arts Commission met in July, and Councilmember Falco.
Thank you, Mayor. The Public Arts Commission met on July 12th. Tina Winstead from the Huntington Memorial Library came as a guest speaker, and she just was kind of talking about the recent and oncoming improvements to the park. So far there's been $1 million put into the park, as you've probably seen, like a lot of changes there. And then there's another $500,000 slated for this next round of improvements, which will include public art or sculptures and or sculptures. There'll be landscaping improvements to the walkways, and they're going to redirect some of the paths for easier navigation and safety. And where the current entrance to the library is, that gazebo type foyer, they're going to put in a plaza, like an art plaza with maybe like a small theater type sitting area. Adjacent to that, there'll be kind of a rock scramble with a natural child's play area. Also some terrace stones for seating. And then there will be a public art feature at that kind of crossroads at the top of the hill. They did solicit some public feedback for that. A lot of people would like to see a water feature. They're talking about perhaps like a mosaic, like an in-ground mosaic or a sculpture. And so the landscape architects are looking into what could be afforded within their budget for that. And she also mentioned that she already had some artists offer to donate works for public art in the lastly, one thing she did note, which I've noticed as well, living right behind the park or in front of it, however you want to put it, the improvements already have changed that overall feeling, especially the lighting of who is occupying the park. There's a lot more families there. It's just overall improving the vibe a lot. Then the commission discussed utility boxes and talked about the possibility of organizing a sponsor utility box type of initiative where individuals or organizations could pay for artwork to decorate those boxes. So they'll be continuing that conversation. Also, they had previously discussed creating like a baseline application policy for soliciting and vetting new projects. So Carrie graciously put together a first draft for the commission to review, so they're going to look at that, bring that back next meeting. They also requested a budget update for the next meeting. And then lastly, they discussed the master plan. So city staff have read through the master plan and made some various suggestions and changes. A lot of it's just kind of like general things, like maybe some updated terminology. I'm happy to share those comments with anyone if they'd like that. And then the commission, they got those comments though after the meeting. So they're in the process of reviewing them, and that will be brought up for discussion at the next meeting. And that is all.
Okay. Yes, Dave?
They received the comments from the staff after the meeting, not before?
Yes, to my knowledge,
Because we
yes.
discussed that at Click on July 26th, and we'd already had those comments for a couple weeks. And your meeting
They
was
didn't have
on
the
July 12th.
comments at the meeting.
This is the July meeting, which was
It was the July
probably
meeting.
preceding the Click meeting.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm really discouraged by this. We've been waiting, this has been a thing, I mean, this has been something that's been in the works since last fall, and it feels like it's been just dropped over and over again. I have no idea why that gap, they didn't see those comments between our meeting and their meeting. I mean, it was like 2 weeks, and everything was sent to them.
They met before you did.
Well, this was a meeting on July 12th.
Right. You met July
We met.
26th,
Later in the month.
later in the month, maybe not the 26th, but.
Okay, then I apologize. I'm looking at my meeting minutes and, okay.
It does seem
All
a
right.
little off because I wasn't, normally I would have been, well, I don't know.
All right.
Yeah, it's.
You weren't here for that.
Yeah.
So this is a back.
Yeah, this is a, yeah.
So when can we expect a revised draft from them?
I believe at the next meeting, on your agenda to
And when are they
review
meeting
and
then?
pass. Third Wednesday.
So that was just about receipt.
The 16th.
Yeah, so they'll meet before your next GLIC meeting.
Okay, so we should have something to discuss. Okay, great.
The next meeting is the ninth.
Or ninth, I'm sorry.
The ninth.
They are the second Wednesday.
Yeah.
You have it
Right, 10 days ahead.
Um,
Further questions or comments?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to the Airport Commission met, and Councilmember Carson.
Mayor, the commission met the 19th of July. Chairman Martin Kennedy led the meeting. He brought up the AWAS, the fuel farm, the partial parallel taxiway. Those were all discussed, what stage those projects are in. And he also suggested doing a work group, which would be tomorrow. But some of the members couldn't make it, so they're going to cancel their work group. But that is something new that's never been done before, so the commission is trying to get some continuity and comradeship built up through work groups. So that's good to know, and good to hear that they're doing that. They talked about membership, and they have one potential non-resident. They're looking for one or two other residents. Congressman Mark Molinaro is looking to visit the airport in August. They talked about fire extinguisher updates. That's going to have to go out to bid. Reaching out to the Friends of Oneonta Airport, promoting the airport, along with SOPs, SOGs, and then the financial report that our financial director, Jenny, had provided, was given to the commissioners to look at and report back next month. And they brought up the phone system is having a problem, so we probably have Carrie get along with the appropriate folks for the phone system. Any questions?
I can tell you that I've had a conversation with a non-resident, back and forth via email. He seems great, we'll talk in person, and I expect that I'll be able to bring his name forward at the August 15th meeting, so you'll be one up, and then we'll begin again a search for some folks that are more locally. Can I ask about the work groups? What the subject of the work groups would be?
Martine suggested, basically just getting familiar with the infrastructure and then walking up and down the runway where you pick up or foreign objects.
Okay, all right. Okay. Any other questions or comments on the Airport Commission? No? Okay, thank you very much, sir. All right, moving on, the Commission on Community Relations and Human Rights were not able to pull together as they like to quorum, so they didn't meet. Charter Review Committee, Councilmember Harrington, if you.
Thank you.
Oh, I think we have the.
The boards, that actually hasn't met, it's just a time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so thank you, Mayor. We met on Thursday, July 20th at 6 o'clock. The topics that we were talking about were removal of members of boards and commissions. That is on for our discussion on this agenda. About basically just down on what it is the council should have some say about moving those or not, but I'll leave that for later. Streamline hiring process to try to make ourselves more competitive. We thought we had something there. That's coming back to the next meeting just to polish up the language just a little bit more. As always, after the fact, you start thinking about more things, and we just want to have a good document to come forward. And then the big one is the definition of departments. That's something that the committee feels strongly about. That should be in the charter for our police and fire, because they're the only ones in there that aren't have any kind of defined. It just says there will be a fire, there will be a police. That's it. It doesn't really say and that the director will be the chief of each department. There's really no, like every other department in here has some type of list of what they do. We feel that that's kind of important for the public to have in there, some type of generalized what those departments are supposed to be.
Questions for Scott on the Charter Review Committee? And we were talking about this a little bit earlier, Scott. We feel like we're getting to a point where we're gonna be able to sunset that committee and call the work done, at least for now.
I believe so. I haven't had a chance to talk to Councilmember Carson or Lepari Shu yet, but with everything else coming forward, I was gonna be talking to them. I mean, we got budget, we're getting into some big stuff here. And
Once you've had an opportunity to have that conversation, you'll connect with me and then we'll decide where we go. Thank you very much, Scott. And that takes us to the Quality of Life and Infrastructure Committee, which I believe met on the 20.
You met on the 24th. Okay. Believe it or not, it wasn't a huge agenda that night. But the first one that we had a discussion with was the Arts Master Plan. And so there was a little bit of a discussion, but as I said earlier, we're waiting for their revised draft. So I'm glad that'll hopefully be on our agenda at the end of this month. Had a very big conversation regarding the tree planting policy. So this discussion came up after concerns came up after the plantings on River Street recently. And out of that, we had sort of an action plan. So we would like to add the Common Council to key player list on the city tree maintenance plan. In future, DPW will share locations of future tree plantings and future trees, since we have a map that shows exactly where everything is going to go, with council members ahead of the planting, who can then discuss it with the residents receiving the trees. We, as a council, we felt like we needed to have a discussion. Initially, it was hiring a full-time arborist, and that sort of morphed into putting out a bid for a forestry service for the city, because the thought was that we plant all these trees and we're really not doing a good job maintaining them. So I think that's, we all thought it was very important to have that discussion. We need to educate the public on the size of the trees that we're planting, and that we're not planting trees that are going to be 200 feet tall like we did 100 years ago. We need to place the tree policy on the city website, and while Mr. Merzig is here, we were going to ask Mr. Merzig, if we're following policy, which body should hear a resident's complaint about a tree that will be or has been planted. So this would be for removal or maintenance. Would that be Board of Public Service, Environmental Board, or the Common Council? And this may be something you want to think about, and then
want to forward to.
yeah. And it's kind of a loaded question. And then we had a discussion about the Morgan Avenue and West Bend Avenue speed study that we are hopefully going to have sometime in the near future, and we want to look for having the Finance Committee discussing purchasing a second apparatus to have the speed study done. Because as of right now, we have one apparatus, so we can only do one speed study at a time. And we have multiple issues throughout the city of speed issues. And that was it.
Okay. I can tell you just personally, I was just so very happy with the tree strategy as it was laid out. I thought it was very impressive work, and I personally appreciate the CLIC's effort there. Let me open it up to the council.
Yeah, I got thinking about this earlier today, Dave, in a conversation was council, the ward, council member in that ward should know, but I'm not sure how the council member's gonna go and try to meet with every person, with every tree that's being planted. I think if we could just get a list of where they're gonna be on the website, so that they know when they're gonna be planted, like a date or something, so residents can go to the website and look. You know, it'd be nice if we could say we're always gonna be able to hit every house that's gonna have it, but realistically, I don't see every council member gonna be able to do that.
Changing our action plan, Scott?
I'm just bringing up a concern that I just see happening, and then, you know,
I think that's a really good point, and I think if there's some way we can put that map that Greg shared with us and Chris shared with us on the website, I think that would be helpful.
Katie?
I just would respectfully like to suggest that we do both. Cause I have had the opportunity when trees have been taken down to go and speak to people. And I think that, yeah, I think it would be good, some of us may be able to do it, like you said, it might depend on who's in the office, it might depend on what the person in the office has going on at that time. So I think making it available to residents directly, but then also giving the council member the opportunity to be the liaison to resident, which is really your job, would be great. So I like the initial action plan as well, and I just don't wanna see that scrapped.
oh no, I'm not saying I wanna see it scrapped, I'm just saying I don't think we can rely on the council person 100% to be that.
Yeah, I like the backup plan too. I think that's smart.
Right, I mean, I had a similar concern as well, because it'd be one thing if we had like a mailing list for all of the residents in our ward, or some way, like an email list, or some way to connect with them, but sometimes it's difficult, especially in my ward where there's like a lot of apartment buildings where you have barriers, it's not like I can just go and knock on everybody's door. You know, so, I do, yeah, I mean, I would like to know, you know, as a representative, I think we should all know where the trees are, but I am glad that you brought that up, that they need to be just more publicly. Okay, that's it, sorry, thank you.
Further questions, comments?
I guess if we're gonna go around, Dave,
Yeah, sure.
I'll just like to say, I'd like to see both, because it does give the council member an opportunity to go and interface with their constituents. It's like this week, Monday is the day I get to babysit my granddaughter, and I'm pushing her down the stroller on Morgan Avenue, only to find NYSEG there, and they're getting ready to tear up 4 streets, of which they tore up 3 of the streets. I was actually surprised I hadn't gotten any phone calls yet, but that's the kind of stuff that, to get ahead of that curve, to know that it is coming, because the questions that I was asking are, how long is this project gonna go for? Are you repaving? Is this gonna be done before school system starts? We were talking about Morgan and West End Ave for the traffic study. Obviously, we don't wanna do that during this tearing up, cause Butler, Moffett, Morgan, and West End Ave are now affected by tearing up of gas mains. So, once that pavement comes up, I'm sure I'm gonna be getting phone calls.
Yeah, it would be nice if we could just get like everything together so we could go out and try to find a way. I know we do the PSA system.
But a calendar, I think a number of people have mentioned that in the communities that I deal with, you know, all the wards, and some sort of a calendar where people do have an idea of what's coming and how long that might take, would be helpful as a communications tool. Emily, too, just as a point of interest, there are voter rolls that are, I can get you.
Oh, yes, I have access to that, I'm just saying, like, if that's the only way that we're communicating,
I think to Len's point, having a couple of different options
Yeah.
and kind of picking and choosing or using, you know, potentially all of them at the same time.
Right.
I don't think we can go wrong by over-communicating with folks at this point. Yes, Dave?
Voter rolls are great, but they don't always have
Age
phone
and-
numbers, they almost never have email addresses. The way I got my email list was when I ran for office and knocked on doors. And apartment buildings, you can go in and knock on every single door. You're allowed to do that. It's just, it's time consuming.
I'd be more suggesting of just a physical address, and snail mail is still, you know, an option. Just, again, multiple options, use that which makes some sort of sense, the main thing being that we are communicating at the best possible level. I know the community would appreciate that.
Just wondering, but this is like not even part of the report, but just a quick question. When we're talking about the public service announcements that we put out, and I know we're trying to up all the people that are on there, because we can break them in between wards and the whole city. What information, when we go door to door, are we supposed to get for the PSA for the person, like if we're gonna try to register somebody?
To sign up,
Yeah,
I think maybe handing out, got like a letter.
I have individual cards for each individual award that you can get printed, but at minimum, a name and an email address or a phone number, and I can do a bulk upload into the system for the respective awards.
Yeah, obviously, if they can sign up themselves, that's easiest with that, but if they can't do that for some reason, there's probably a QR code on that or a link.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be good too.
Have we exhausted this?
Push notification as opposed to, you know, where we opt into asking for the city to notify.
Mark, maybe in your marketing, we could do, maybe with your marketing, we could do something with our newspaper and
Gotta say stop.
about getting the PSA information
Yeah,
out
no.
for sign up.
So if there's nothing else for Scott, and there's nothing else for, we're on quality of life, actually, is what we were, Dave. Nothing else for Dave, then we'll move on to Katie, and the Finance and Human Resources.
Okay, we met Thursday, which was the 27th. On our agenda, we have motions 3 and 4. So I'll just go through those first. Motion 3 is with regard to the installation of the Wilbur Lake Trail Bridge. You'll remember that we purchased the bridge itself. This is the bid for the installation. It came in, I think, a little bit higher than we were expecting. Do I have? Yeah, I just was wondering if I had notes here. Yeah, it's $20,000 over the initial projection. It brings the budget to a total of $130,000. That's going to be funded through ARPA, which is in the motion. Motion, and the committee agreed with that, which is why it's on our agenda today. Motion number 4 is an amendment to the contract with Delaware Engineering for some necessary testing that wasn't provided for in the initial contract. It's not very expensive in the grand scheme of things. It's $5,500. The testing is going to be for basement water testing and fee and postage for an asbestos variance permit. This will be funded through the Restore New York grant. We also discussed a maintenance worker appointment that is budgeted and vacant but didn't make it to the agenda today. We received a civil service update from our personnel director. We discussed, actually we got a really thorough explanation of this topic from our personnel director. The Civil Service Commission has made a recommendation to the council to waive the exam fees, which are $25 for police and fire, $15. Do you have this written down?
$25 for uniform and $15 for ununiform.
Okay, excellent. After a lengthy discussion, which basically the committee agreed, we have a policy in place where we will waive those exam fees for financial hardship, and we don't particularly require any exhaustive proof. We basically just have to ask. And since we felt that since we have that in place, the exam fees aren't really a barrier. So we recommended not waiving those fees. We were told by the personnel director that, you know, there's a lot of conversation around the state about waiving the fees because the state has waived the fees for state exams, and so there's some confusion. Municipalities are saying, why should we do this? But it's pretty split. So, you know, based on the reasons we came up with during our discussion, we decided that we would not recommend waiving the local civil service exam fees. The City Hall Business Hours Survey had some results, but they were not definitive, so that's kind of going back to the drawing board. And no news yet on the intermunicipal agreement with the town of Oneonta for the Route 23 and 28 project, so hopefully we'll know more about that next time. That's it.
Questions? Comments?
Sure.
Were those devices for the data collection for speeds on streets, were they approved through your committee?
They were not on our agenda at our last so hopefully the next one.
Dave, I'm not sure remember that.
It should be on there. I can jump in
Um,
there. I mean, the cost of those devices does not rise to the level where it will require council approval to
Oh.
transfer that.
It's like $4,000.
It doesn't really need to go through the committee, but we're aware of the interest in that. So Chris and I haven't had a chance to sit down with the police chief and lieutenant and talk about our strategy. But that's.
But you can
on
make
our
it,
plate.
you can make it happen.
Yeah, we can likely find the money, but that won't be necessary to get it done.
Good.
Cool, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you very much. All right. And city administrator's report, do you have anything?
Yeah, I have a few things, Mayor, thank you. Gary informed me today that city clerk's office has gone live with their online ordering system for vital records. It's another way for city residents to purchase those records rather than having to come in or email. This will accelerate the turnaround time, automates, tracks, and organizes the ordering process. You can find that on the city website, just look under city department, city clerk. It's under one of the related links on the left-hand side. So that's a nice feature, and that's at no cost to the city. You may have heard or found out that there was a fire on 248 River Street last Friday morning around 4:30 a.m. Fortunately, our police patrol smelled the sense of a burning structure, and they found this fire in a garage / office at 248 River Street. And they obviously reported that. The fire department responded, were able to put out the fire, contain it from spreading to the entire building. A number of volunteer departments came in support as well. There were no people in the building when the fire occurred, and there were no injuries. Cause is still under investigation. River Street projects, the east end of River Street from Main to just past Scrambling Ave, that water main replacement. The main itself is just about complete, as well as the Ann Street water main replacement. The next step in that construction process is replacing water services along that stretch. Center Street Bridge replacement, cap replacement project is just about complete. Paving later this week, and we anticipate that street being reopened by next week, which is on schedule, a little ahead of schedule. That's all I had, unless there are any questions.
Questions?
I have a question.
Yes, Catherine.
It's not about anything that you talked about, but, so the striping, is that complete? Striping?
I don't believe so, I'm
No?
not sure if we
Okay.
have like a rough idea of percentage.
Okay,
They're chiseling away at it.
okay, cool, thank you. That was it.
Scott?
Greg, Sixth Ward would like to say thank you for getting rid of the potholes during the construction and paving over everything. I know Chris had a lot to do with that, so. I've been getting calls the opposite way now, instead of potholes, they're saying thank you. So I just wanted to pass that up.
That's nice, isn't it?
Our engineering and inspection guy out there, they had a lot of conversations with the contractor, moving that along. So thank you.
Yeah, recognize the job supervisor, inspector.
All set? Okay, very good. Thank you, Ken. And thank you, Greg. And we'll move on now to the consent agenda. With the approval of the minutes, motion that the common council approves the minutes of the regular meeting held July 18, 2023. Motion number 2, that the common council approves the warrants totaling $783,314.97, and that the same be placed on the Director of Finance's desk for payment as presented. Motion number 3, that the common council approves the purchasing agent's recommendation to award the bid for the Wilbur Lake Bridge installation project to the lowest responsive bidder, both our Construction LLC, Pennington, New York, in the amount of $77,250. And the council further authorizes an increase in the Wilbur Lake Bridge capital project budget in the amount of $20,000, bringing the total project budget to $130,000 to be funded with American Rescue Plan Act ARPA funds. And the council further authorizes the necessary budget transfers and amendments. Motion number 4, that the common council authorizes the city administrator to sign a contract amendment with Delaware Engineering, DPC, Oneonta, New York, for additional services including water sampling and analysis and NYSDOL variance application relating to the contract for demolition specifications, bid documents, and required documentation in connection with the demolition of the 27 Market Street building approved by council on November 3rd to be funded by the Restore New York grant funds for a cost not to exceed $5,500, subject to the approval of the city attorney. And that ends the consent agenda. Do we have anything to be removed? We do not. Wonderful. Do I have a motion to approve? We'll go with Glenn, followed by Scott. And with that, we go roll.
Councilmember Murphy?
Aye.
Councilmember Lisberger?
Aye.
Councilmember LaParisio? Aye. Councilmember Anderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Overby?
Yes.
Councilmember Feldman? Aye.
Okay. Now, in our discussion agenda, we have a motion that the Common Council approves the local law amending section C15 of the Charter of the City of Oneonta to allow for the removal of members of city boards and commissions by a majority vote of the Common Council. This local law was laid electronically on July 25, 2023. Do we have a motion to approve? Katie, followed by Len. And discussion. So I'm gonna jump in. This bothers me quite a bit. What would come of this approval would be that we would be potentially, not even potentially, there'd be a public shaming, frankly, of people who, for whatever reason, weren't able, in their mind's eye or whatever, reality that they're dealing with, to be attending the numbers of boards and commission meetings as would be appropriate. What I've been doing, what I've done since I've gotten here a year and a half ago, is, as best as I know, when there is a board or commission member that is not connective to their board or commission, I've sought them out, I've gained their resignation, and we moved on and filled the position, and they weren't brought in front of the public for a conversation around whether or not they were fulfilling their volunteered duty as a member of a board or commission. I would prefer to continue that option. The mayor is the one that appoints the boards and commissions with the council approval. I would very much prefer to continue the current practice, which is to, in some fashion, either by coercion of a resignation, if that's necessary, or pursuing which I have not had to do, a public removal of a board or commission member. But I certainly don't think that there's anything to be gained by having someone who, for reasons we may not be aware of, has found themselves not connective to their particular board or commission. I prefer the option to be able to do that discreetly. So that's my position on it. Yes, David?
When it comes to the charter, I mean, I'm sure you all know, I come from the point of view that if it's not broke, don't fix it. So I've been struggling with this one since I saw it on the agenda, and I'm wondering, since under C15 in the charter, it already gives somebody the authority to remove an appointee, and as far as I know, we haven't had an issue with members appointed to boards and commissions that had to be removed. So I'm just wondering, how did this come about? Like, why was this brought up for discussion to begin with? I mean, there's usually some background behind, or there's got to be some reason.
I will just, I'll defer to the Charter Review Committee in a second, but I do want to make it clear that in fact, I think I've removed by way of resignation, I think 7 or 8 folks, and there's actually 1 pending because of lack of attendance. When I've come to know of it, I've taken that action, but the Charter Review Committee can answer that question that you posed. Scott?
Well, the one question that was asked was to our city attorney was, since the council approved, could the council take away if needed be by a majority vote, in which he told us no. So it came that, I thought, from what we were discussing, was there has been instances where past mayors, we have had boards with commission members on them that haven't been showing up for a long period of time, and they just wouldn't be removed. They waited for the term to expire, then they filled with either somebody new or whatever. So really, it was just one of those checks and balances that, you know, to put in there that if, you know, we had, nothing against this mayor or past mayors, I'm just saying that this is an extra check and balance that if we see as the council, who is the one that's in charge more so of the city and the well-being of the city, was there's a check and balances that we had the authority to be able to remove somebody if needed be. So.
My own opinion is, I mean, we do approve members to boards and commissions, but we're approving, or not approving, the recommendation from the mayor. I don't see a reason to change this. I mean, I understand where you're coming from, but I think it's, if one of us notices there's a board and commission member that is not showing up repeatedly, I think it's our job, since we're the liaisons to these boards and commissions, to call the mayor and let the mayor know that this is going on. And then it's up to it should be up to the mayor to then remove this person that they took the time to search out and try to bring forward. So I understand where you're coming from, and I can't support this one.
Luke, can I share my personal experience?
Luke, do you mind?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I served on the zoning board of appeals and the planning commission over a period of 20 years, and there were, I know of situations, and it all had to do with lack of engagement, not showing up for meetings, not going out on site visits, that sort of thing, where it never got to the mayor. The chairman of the board talked to the person and saved the mayor the problem of dealing with it. But, and I know that wasn't always the case, but you know, just sort of voluntary resignation on a low-key basis. And so, based on that experience, and I know that in many instances, our mayor and mayors in the past have dealt with the situation discreetly. It seems like the right way to deal with it. I mean, we're talking about our friends and fellow residents that we pass on Main Street. And I agree with Mayor Drennick. It shouldn't come down to public shaming.
Luke, thank you.
Yeah, this is just more of a clarifying question. As it states that the mayor has the ability to ask someone to be removed, does this remove that ability? Does it still give the mayor the ability to ask, or this takes it out of his hands, his or her future hands completely?
No, it'd still be the mayor has it, but the council would also have it if the mayor fails to act.
I think that's going to add more confusion. I would worry.
Well, that's why I was asking for a little bit of clarity. Whether it makes, I didn't see it there, but I didn't know if that was the implied part of it. Thank you.
Further discussion?
I'm just wondering, has there ever been, I mean, not to ask for specifics, but has there ever been an instance where there was someone on a board or commission that kind of wasn't pulling their weight, and it became like an issue where this would have been needed, this circumstance for the council to remove that person? That anyone can think of?
My own experience from the Charter Commission was over 3 years. I think we had 3 people that, for whatever reason, they weren't showing up. And so we had a discussion in-house, and I went and approached each one of the persons over time and found out what was going on, and then asked them if they would step down, and it was never an issue. So they did hear about one particular person and putting them on the agenda to remove them in a community this small, I mean, phew.
Right, I mean, yeah.
I don't think the intent was ever public shaming. I don't kind of like that phrase that came up because that wasn't.
That's not your intent, but I think that would end up.
I know, and like I said, I mean, the mayor called me earlier today about it, and like I said, this is why it's on discussion, because it was one of those things that we kind of did like, yeah, but let's let the council have their say, because, you know, it kind of went with the whole, when this all started was the council wanted to be able to prove even on the ad hoc committee side, you know, so it was like one of those things, let's just finish up the package, let the council make their decision, and then it could just be done. You know, that's the way I took the whole thing, so.
Further discussion on this? I think we could probably take a vote.
Call a vote, he was on a table.
Or you can, did you just motion to table?
Sure.
Second.
Second? Then
Councilmember Murphy?
No.
Councilmember Risberger?
No.
Councilmember Hirsch?
Yes?
wait a minute, what are we voting on?
Motion to table.
We're tabling it.
There's a vote to table.
Right.
You voted against the vote to table.
So you voted, this is a motion to table.
Yes, correct.
I'm
I'm
saying
saying no.
And so did Councilman Whisper.
Yeah.
Councilmember Carson?
Yes, to table.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yes, the table.
Councilmember Overby?
No.
Councilmember Falcon?
No.
Motion to table fails.
All right, so with that, the motion is still on the table.
There has been no motion.
Yeah, there was a motion.
There was a motion.
Yeah, there was a first and a second,
Right.
then there was a motion to
Okay,
table, which
sorry.
failed.
I didn't get it.
So that said, we either are still in discussion on this motion or we move to a vote on it. And it doesn't look, are we still in discussion on this or are we moving to a vote?
I'm,
Okay.
yeah, I'll just say that I'm glad that we brought it to the broader group because that wasn't the intention of the Charter Commission, and having that additional perspective, it's like, it was, yeah, I never intended that, and so I'm glad that we talked about it. Yeah.
All right, so I think we are ready to take a vote on the motion as it's been presented. Motion number 5, go ahead. If you'd like. Yes.
Councilmember Murphy?
No.
Councilmember Risberger?
No.
Councilmember Hirsch?
No.
Councilmember Carson?
No.
Councilmember Harrington?
No.
Councilmember Overby?
No.
Councilmember Falcon? No.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Discussion of downtown Main Street parking time limits. There's you should find in your package a survey that I went around and visited with 39 merchants, 38 merchants and restaurateurs downtown, filled out the survey. And on the very last page of that survey, in yellow, you'll see a reiteration of what the question was and what the respondents and I provided, with a quick math on it, the percentages of folks one way or the other. And the question was change all to 1 hour, from 1 hour to 2 hour on Main Street, and that's just short of 74% saying please do that. Almost 88% said don't change some of it, change all of it. And then on the subject of changing adjacent streets to 2 hour from 1 hour, again, it was 78.4% of respondents. There was one respondent that didn't answer the second question that had 2 parts, so that's why you see one number less there. Changed only some of the adjacent streets. Again, it was a pretty significant majority said, if you're going to do it for everything. As I said, 38 out of 39 businesses that were contacted provided not only the survey, but I think that the comments that they provided are also very much worth looking at. So that's what I'm bringing to you guys for this discussion, and I will back out and let you guys have the discussion.
I have something I think to ask Greg and Chris too, might be a good question for this. I understand and appreciate the business owner perspective on this. Do you see any reason as to how changing the parking one way or the other could affect potentially public safety or traffic patterns negatively?
I
I don't either. Okay.
Yes, Emily?
I'll just say as, representative of downtown and also as a wife of a downtown business owner, the reason why I, am in support of changing it to 2-hour parking is because of the impression that people get when they come into town and they see 1-hour parking. If you're not from here, you might not know that it's not, very regimentedly, enforced, like all the time. But it's going to encourage you to move your car within an hour, right? If you park in a 1-hour spot because you don't want to get a ticket. And so it doesn't leave you really enough time to go and get lunch, especially if you're going to go to a restaurant where you might sit down for a little bit of a longer lunch. And then go and peruse some shops or, it doesn't even really give you enough time to get lunch. You have 45 minutes pretty much. You gotta get back to your car and now you gotta move it and now you gotta drive away. So for tourists coming in, just extending it to that 2-hour, now you're giving them enough time to grab a bite to eat and go into a couple places. And I also feel like there really is a demand for a little bit longer term parking. Where we used to have the parking garage, people could go and they could park there for, up to 4 hours, I think it was. Now that all of that longer term parking is unavailable, more of the outer lots are seeing it's more crowded because there is a higher demand for a parking spot that's gonna allow you a little more time downtown. So I really feel like changing it to 2-hour is going to help foot traffic for Main Street businesses. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So where do we go from here, guys?
That has to be changing the code, right? Because aren't these parking spots in the code, so you'd have to do a, yeah.
Can you talk, Greg, about what needs to happen on your end? Because you were basically waiting for council direction.
Right, the direction is to change all downtown 1-hour spots to 2 hours, and we'll write up the chapter we call 282, request to change chapter 282 of the city code that defines parking restrictions and bring that back to the council to make it official. And in the meantime, start the process of how we're gonna actually implement that as soon as the vote.
Are you gonna do it with stickers or new signs?
I think we'll have to look at that for sure, but you're saying stickers for sure? Yeah, we'll probably just use stickers. Again, we're talking about implementing paid parking in the future, and we don't wanna change all the signs out, and have to maybe change them out again next year, or whenever that might be, so the more efficient we can be, stickers is the way.
I did have another
Yeah.
question.
Sure.
I'm also wondering, in my mind, I wonder if having a longer time limit per parking spot, if that can help the city enforce it more regularly, if it doesn't have to be every hour. I'm not sure how those spots are being enforced at the moment, but if it is 2-hour, would it be better for the city to maybe enforce it a little more consistently?
It does seem like that might make some sort of sense, but I'll defer. We don't have Chris here, so I'll defer to.
Yeah, I mean, I think we discussed that with Chief Witzenberg to see how it might change their approach. I mean, you still have to, go around it and, check consistently throughout the day, depending on when you're checking and 2 hours later.
Right.
Whether it's 1 hour later. I don't think it changes a whole lot, but obviously there's a bit of a difference. But
You'll see among the comments, there are some folks that have made note of the fact that they don't see that the enforcement is there. And they know that there are folks in fact that know that and will park for 6 and 8 hours in front of their store or restaurant. And, you know, parking spots are not always easy to come by, and so they have an opinion about that. Yes,
So I suppose if a store owner notices that a car has been parked in front of their business for 6 hours, can they call the police and report that? Is that what would be, okay. Is that what would you recommend?
Not discouraged.
Okay.
You know, enforcement is we enforce to the extent of the
I can
resources
understand
available,
that.
and of course, with a 1 hour or 2 hour, you know, we don't wanna consistently be ticketing people like exactly 2 hours, you know, there's a little bit of a, you know,
Sure.
leeway there so that we're not, you know, creating issues, but, yeah, if there's a problem there, yeah, we can always report that.
Okay, thank you.
So, Katie?
Yep, I would just say, you know, we have the data in front of us for what people want, and, our eighth ward representative has been, you know, very, very clear and a champion of this, so I didn't feel strongly about it one way or another, but data always helps me see that, so I would recommend that we make this change. I think also in the comments, there are a couple other things that I would like to see based on the comments and feedback that I've received, so I kind of want to put them by the room while we're doing chapter 282 potentially. One is a suggestion by the Greater Oneonta Historical Society to make the Wall Street lot 4-hour parking. I don't think that's a bad idea. I also wonder about the Westcott lot. I think employees right now are looking for places to put their car, and if we can make some of those spaces available for them, that would be great. Lots are kind of busy and higher density, so it makes a little bit more sense. And then the other thing that I would recommend, or I would like to recommend for us to consider is putting a sign in the new spaces that are behind the Beats lofts that says that that is public parking. Just because of the way that you get in there and it being behind a building, it's kind of sequestered, and so I think the more apparent we can make it that those are public parking spaces, the more likely they are to be filled, and they're pretty convenient to Main Street, so those would be my 2 suggestions, is that we take the one suggestion and then also the other.
I would echo, especially your second point about the confusion around the East Street lot. I've gotten multiple correspondences today wondering if it was still allowed that they park there.
Yeah.
So it will sort of can be, you know, easily put together a roll signage until such times we have something, you know, permanent, just to let people know that this is public parking. Yes.
If we have a member of the public that's interested in commenting on this, I know it's not open discussion now, when is the best time for them to asking for someone in the gallery?
Sorry, I missed half of it.
We have someone in the gallery with a question.
Do we?
We do, but I don't know what protocol is for.
I could certainly entertain 3 minutes from somebody in the gallery. Who do we have? And you are again?
I'm Vince LaRocca. I got a question for you. Well, first, what's being done to reopen the parking garage?
The parking garage is not gonna wind up reopening as that's not on the, in the cards, as it is, been declared unsafe. And,
So it's not being repaired, or some people?
the council is in process, and we'll be talking about that, in a couple of weeks on August 15th, of making a determination about the transit hub, its location, and the parking garage itself will be informed by that. But our expectation is, one way or the other, that the parking garage will wind up torn down, and at the very least, we'd be looking at a parking lot in that, in that place as soon as we were able to make that happen.
Also, you mentioned that you can't over-communicate, all right? I live at 504 Main Street, all right? And a bike path was just put in relatively recently, all right? And I got 3 tickets in front of my house, and I had no idea that they had even changed the signs, all right? There's one at the far end of the street, and then one at the other far end of the street, and I'm like dead center, all right? So, how come they send you letters and all this other sort of stuff for every other little thing going on there, but not something that says, oh, you can't park in front of your house anymore?
That's honestly, that's a lot more questions than I was anticipating, but Greg, we're talking about.
Did I talk to you on the phone
where Salon is right there?
last week?
I don't believe I spoke.
Okay.
You talked to me.
Oh, you? Oh, okay.
So just a little history, I mean, the bike lane and the changes to the parking, that was actually approved
2019.
19, is it? Obviously the lines were initially painted and they faded quite a bit while we were unable to get a big parking contractor to refresh them for a couple of years. And I think there might have been some signage that wasn't originally changed out, it must have been just recently changed out, and that's probably how that came about.
Okay.
We don't typically send letters to residents notifying them of.
But then why don't you put, then why wouldn't you put up a sign that says new sign here, so this way you know to not park there? Because he told me that at one point it was a no parking here to corner, at one point it was a no parking for snow removal, and they're both white with red lettering. Okay, so how am I supposed to know that they change anything unless there's something put out there saying, oh, by the way, or even the cop before he tickets me saying, oh, by the way, don't you know that we just changed these signs? You can't park on the street anymore? Instead of writing me up, the same cop writing me up 3 times?
So as you and I had discussed, in 2019, they changed the rule so that there was no parking all the time.
How am I supposed to know that?
I'm guessing, Greg, the signs were installed back then? So anyway, we've been doing inventory of our signs. We noticed these signs have been pulled, someone pulled them out, so we reinstalled them.
So at this point, I appreciate, thank you very much for the input. Hopefully, a little bit of that conversation with Chris has been a help. We are, I think, all committed to a higher level of communication, so I appreciate, again, your input here. I want to bring this conversation back to our agenda, if I could. And where we had left it, we've lost Katie, but where we have left it now is what is necessary for you to be able to proceed, Greg, relative to the motion, or is it enough that we've given you the consensus opinion that you might continue, or that you might start this process, and then a motion when you've kind of finalized that?
Based on my sense that we're
Please
looking
be
for a
consistent.
motion at the next council meeting to change all 1-hour parking to 2-hour parking on street in the downtown area. That's the motion we'll prepare, so that will be the vote we need next time.
Right.
Need
And
a vote.
Can we do that by resolution? Oh, excuse me.
Go ahead, Ed.
Can we do that by resolution, or do we need to have a law laid on it?
You have to have an ordinance. Don't lay it on the desk. There's a process, very open to it. It'll be done by passage of an ordinance.
So it's not something we can deal with here tonight?
No.
We need to approve specific language that goes to their vote.
I do also agree with increasing the time limits on Wall Street and Westcott lot, the Wall Street lot and Westcott lot to 4 hour. You know, like, it just gives more people time to spend downtown. And also I do really like that idea of the parking sign, because even my mother and I were walking by there the other day and she's like, oh, that's not private parking. I think a lot of, behind Dean Street lofts, I think a lot of people don't realize that that is still public parking. So I don't know if that can also, if the council is in agreement with that as well, if that could also maybe be folded into that resolution for the next meeting. Anyone?
Sure. I believe so. And in the meantime, I think we can literally do some we have to do some guerrilla style wayfinding signs anyway for folks. I've heard there's a lot of confusion among folks who are visiting, as even where the D Street lot is. They think because there's also a lot on D Street on the other side.
Right.
That may be the D Street lot, and there's not 24-hour parking there, and we found ourselves with some issues because of that. So I think we can probably generate some 11, 17 signs between the two of us,
Okay.
right? And just kind of get them up in the meantime. Yes, one.
Last time we talked about this, we talked about doing this incrementally. And so I have reservations about going all out on the Westcott and Wall parking lots to right to 4 hours. I'm wondering if maybe it's better to have some designated parking in those lots be for 4 hours. Greg likes collecting data, maybe that's something that we can look at to see if people aren't holding out on those spots. I mean, as we were talking about inconsistency and evaluating who's where they are and how long they're being there. I'm fearful that we're going from 1 hour to 2 hours. There was comments in here that they were asking for pickup and delivery, and we're not acknowledging that. And that's a established business that's been there for a very long time. I hate to hurt their business because somebody can't go down and pick up some pizza and run. So I don't want to hurt them. And if we go from 2 hours, then go 4 hour and 4 hour on the lots, that's really going to stagnate how much parking moving there is, how many vehicles can come down here.
Right.
To the same businesses, these restaurants that want to have their patrons enjoy it, they may not get those because they can't get in the parking lot. So if you take the Westcott lot and the Wall Street lot and lock it out for 4 hours, then somebody could potentially block those parking lots. I don't know.
So if we take one bite of this at a time, the bite that everybody, there's a consensus on, which is the 1 hour to 2 hour. And then, as those folks who are on the parking task force know, there's a couple of them in this room, know that as soon as you start to get into the weeds around parking, the loading zones, all that type of thing, it winds up becoming that much more complicated and could derail what there's certainly a large percentage of people would like to see us take action on. So I would say, if you guys agree, that we can provide, Katie, you,
I can speak after you,
I would say that we have enough for Greg to be able to begin his process, and then we can have that as a motion at our next meeting. But Katie, let me let you have the last word.
No, I would agree. I mean, I think, my initial hesitation, right, was that I like being able to get a spot and get what I need to do, because generally I have someone to tow. But I think it would be great if we could, I agree, Mark, that we don't want to get too into the weeds and forget that we want to approve this 2 hour change on Main Street. Again, signs, I don't want that to get lost either, but I think there has to be a way where or a place where we have that conversation about, like, are we giving employees what they need also? And, how do we, so one of the things that was suggested on here is a employee resident parking pass. I know that's something that we floated a lot. I don't know where that is in the parking committee. But I think, there are different levels of parking that are needed, and maybe this conversation isn't the place for it, but I think there is a place needed for more longer-term parking for people who have a reason to, a need to stay downtown for chunks of time. They can't be moving their car every 2 hours, so. So I would like to see both of those things addressed, and I appreciate that you brought up the kind of loading quick zone thing. That would be great.
So I think the parking task force is, I don't know when the next time you guys meet, but I think we might take some direction from the parking task force, and based on that direction, maybe have a conversation that is then filtered through the common council to maybe address in more the short term than the long term the parking issues that we've just talked about outside the 1 and 2 hour. Yes, Dave.
Yeah, I just want to say, I agree with what everybody said here. I think that with parking, we all know it's what is bad parking to one person is good parking to another person, and I think we're going to go through a lot of parking hiccups over the next year, or hopefully not much longer than that. But I think we have to be careful that we're not immediately knee-jerk reactionary and take our time making the choice. So I agree changing it to the 1 hour to 2 hour first, and then let's take a step back and see what other people
I think
want
that
to do.
sounds like a plan. So I feel like we are, and there is no need for motion here, correct? We were agreed on that? And we can call that discussion ended for tonight, and we can move on to a presentation and discussion of the 2024 budget.
Hello, everyone. First, you will see on your desk that there is a binder that I've started for you for all of our 2024 budget presentations. Tonight, you've got 2 inserts into your binder. Feel free to take them out if it's easier for you to go through them as we go through our discussion. But in future meetings, I will be handing out things to you, all hole punched. You'll be able to put them into your binders yourself and keep them organized for yourself as we go through the process. If you like this process, please let me know. If you don't like the process, we can stop it. I just thought it might be convenient for you to have all your materials together. To begin our discussion, you've got, as I said, in your binders you have 2 presentations. One is for the PowerPoint and one is more detail oriented. So what we want to discuss tonight is, Carrie? Greg? We want to discuss the tax cap, the tax levy, the sales tax, the general fund revenue sources. Can you back up one screen? There you go. The general fund expenditures, our outstanding debt, fund balances, water and sewer rates, and revenue histories, discussion items, and meeting schedules. That's kind of the topics we would just like to discuss briefly tonight. And I know it's late and it's been a very long day, so I'll try to get through this quickly. So the first thing that I would like to do is talk about the tax cap. In your information packet, it's page 1 and 2, I've given you the detail of the tax cap formula going back to 2012, the first year that was implemented. For 2024, if you look at your slide presentation, the formula brings us to where we're able to raise $80,349 in the tax levy. The reason it's $80,000 and instead of $108,000 is because our pilot agreement revenues have gone up by about $23,000, and that is because in 2024 the Dietz Street Loft pilot agreement will take effect. So between what we can raise on pilot revenue and tax levy revenue, it's about $108,000. So that's why it's a net $80,000, which is right now a 1.55% tax levy increase. Now, what I did when I was working on the tax cap formulas, and I was putting all the history into these papers, I said to myself, what if every time we raised the tax, or we approved the tax levy, we went all the way to the tax cap formula. The tax cap formula by New York State is designed so the taxpayers are protected from excess taxing jurisdictions. It's a tool that the state has set for us to use. We can override the tax cap, but it's kind of a preset guideline to help you keep your tax increase to a minimum. So what I did is I recalculated what our tax levy would be today if we had gone to the tax limit since 2012. And Greg, if you go to the next slide, please. You will see that the orange guide is where our actual levy was, and the reddish is where it could have been had we gone all the way to the tax cap back to 2012. And if you flip to page 3 of your detail, you will see what our actual tax levy was and what I call what if tax levy. Had we done this since 2012 going to the cap, and you will see that there was a number of years where we did go to the cap, I wanna say, 13, 14, 15, 16, in that time period. But had we gone to the cap every year since 2012, we would have collected almost $3 million more in revenues over that time period. And basically, what our actual levy averaged out to since 2012 is about $69,000 a year. Had we gone to the tax cap every year, it would have averaged out to about $100,000 every year. If we were at our total cap, had we done that since 2012, our levy would be about $360,000 more for 2023, or about 7.2% higher to get there. And what that does, you know, and I'm just giving you like the what ifs. If we were at that level right now, our rate would be about 76 cents higher per thousand. So that would equate to about $76 per 100,000 on assessment, about $114 for 150,000, and about $152 for about a $200,000 assessment. I'm giving you this information only to let you know how decisions of revenue sources can compound over the years. The past administrations did great jobs at making the best decisions that they could with the information they had at the time. But because and I'm just bringing this to your attention just to know what the compound effect is for many years afterwards when we leave money on the table. And also because of our current budget situation, I just wanted to bring this to your attention. And hoping that you will consider letting us go to the tax cap again this year, and how it will affect future years if we do leave money on the table. So that is basically why I wanted to bring this to your attention. So the next slide is a bar comparison, and it shows you the actual of what we did do versus what we could have done had the decisions been a little bit different. And the next slide just shows you the estimated taxable assessment of $496 million. And Greg, I will say there is one typo. The 84,000 should be 54,000. Greg and I found that difference, and I just didn't get the correction to him soon enough, so I apologize for that. So if we do increase the tax levy for 2024 by the 80,000, it will increase the tax bill by $16.20 per 100,000 in assessment. So what Greg and I will be looking for you from the council is guidance on how you would like to, for us to prepare for the tax levy increase for 2024. Then, and I don't know if you want to discuss that now, or if you'd like to discuss it after, or if you want to discuss it at our next meeting. You guys just let me know on how you want to do it.
8th, right, at 5?
Yes, we are, and honestly, I think this is, if we can give people kind of the
Yes,
sense
yep,
of where
yep,
we're going with
yep,
this.
absolutely,
it'll
yep.
Help inform that conversation.
So then what I would like to touch on next is our major tax revenue sources. And obviously one of the big ones is sales tax. This graph just shows you a history and a bar graph of what we've collected since 2016. But in your detail information, I've given it to you by month and by year. So you can see the actual sales tax history. And you will notice that 2021 and 2022, we actually went over the 5 million mark. We had 5.3 million in sales tax revenue in 21 and 5.8 in 22. So year to date for 23, we are 6.4% ahead of 22, or about 152,000.
Is that enough to, if we're on projections, to be around the 6 million mark, a little over the 6 million mark?
Well, yeah, I think if it stays, I'm going to answer that question in just a moment, and because I've done some projections.
Okay.
So the next slide shows you, I wanted to show because I've got actual data for the first 5 months.
I'm sorry to interject. Could you just talk a little bit about, for my understanding, what our role with sales tax collection is with the county?
We have an agreement with the county that we share 12% of the sales tax collected countywide. That sales tax agreement has been in place, I want to say, since Dave Brenner's days. I want to say in the 1990s, maybe 19.
He served 12 years as mayor.
He served 12 years as mayor. And because we have that agreement with the county is mandated to share another 12% with all of the other municipalities throughout Siegel County. And that's a mandate. If we did not have that agreement with the county, they would not have to share any of their sales tax.
Okay.
So, so right now, the county keeps 76% and then shares out the other 24%, with the city getting 12% and then the other municipalities getting another 12%. The only responsibility that we have is if we wanted to renegotiate the agreement with the county, but this has worked well for many years now, and also the county increased their sales tax by 1%. It used to be 3, it went up to 4. I don't remember the year, but when that also happened, our share went up. So what happens is that because we've got this current agreement with the county, any growth in Otsego County, either being in the town of Oneonta or the other areas within Otsego County, we share in that sales tax.
And what is the alternative?
The alternative is if we wanted to go back to renegotiate the contract, say we wanted to ask for 12.5%, then we would have to get the county to agree to that, or we preempt sales tax, which means if we go through the preemption, there's a lot of legal things that we have to do at the state level, and then the city of Oneonta would have their own sales tax percentage that we would have to collect at the city level.
Okay. And it would be just within city
It was
limits?
just would be within the city limits.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you for helping me understand that. I feel like I've never had a direct explanation, so I appreciate that very much.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. Yeah?
So just to help everybody, and I was gonna ask for this anyways, because of my own personal curiosity. For our workshop this Thursday, can you break that down for us? How much sales tax do we actually collect as the city? And then we'll understand.
I do not have numbers. I am not allowed to know how much sales tax revenue is collected within the city limits versus other municipalities. The only person that is allowed to have that information that I know of in Otsego County is Alan Ruffles. And you're going to see a slide here of the information that I got from Alan. He's allowed to tell me where the sources come from, but he's not allowed to tell me where the locations come
When you
from.
say sources, you mean
If it's,
the retail space?
yes.
Okay.
So, and we're gonna get to that.
I see that.
We'll-
All right, so he's not allowed to break that down?
He's not allowed to share that information. It's considered privileged, and he's just not, I've asked before if I can have it, and the answer's no.
Okay. Huh. Yeah. That's strange.
So, so then I also wanted to give you, the sales tax revenue for the first 5 months. And you will see how, we are on course, to exceed our 2023 budget, and how it is, we're on course again for the first 5 months to exceed what we did for 2022. So then, the slide's gonna show you the top 6 taxable sales, but in your handouts, this is from Otsego County. And you will see on there that automobile dealers, provides 11.02% of the sales tax revenue collected in Otsego County. Building material and supply dealers, 8.43. Restaurants and other eating places, 8.15. Merchandise, general merchandise stores, warehouse clubs, and supercenters, 8.03. Electronic shopping and mail order houses, this is internet sales, is 6.55, and then gasoline stations are 5.57. So the top 6 categories provide 62.91% of the sales tax collected in Otsego County. So car dealerships, I want everybody to know is we don't have many car dealerships within the city of Oneonta limits. One. Okay? All right, so I think it is crucial that we keep our sales tax agreement with the county as is. That's my recommendation.
Jenny, where does cannabis sales tax come into? This is obviously, we're looking at past here.
I do
As we
not,
move
yeah,
forward.
I do not know if the state's going to have a separate category for that yet, but that will, as those sales start, I'll find that information out.
Yeah, presumably beer, wine, and liquor stores, right, since they're regulated, I mean, it's just an assumption that since they're regulated by the same agency.
So what I did with the sales tax revenue is, and again, I would like you to look at the detail instead of the slides on this one, please. On page 7, I took 2023 and I said, all right, we've got actual data through the month of May. What if 2023, for the remainder months of the year, we received exactly what we got in 2019 for June through December? If we get that number, it's going to be about $5.4 million. David? This one.
What page is it?
It's page
There's a
7.
red tab of page 7. Thank you.
If we were to receive the same amount for, that we did in 2021, it would be almost 5.6 million. If we were to receive the same as we did in 2022 for the months of June through December, it would be almost a $6 million mark. It'd be 5.9. So, if I average those for those three projections, the average is about 5.6. So my recommendation for 2024 would be to budget 5.4 million. That would be an increase of $425,000. As I've said to you in previous budget sessions, I'm not comfortable with increasing the sales tax over the $5 million mark until we get 3 years in a row that number gets hit. I think that we have enough data now to safely consider doing our 2024 budget at the 5.4 million mark. Yes, Len?
I'm just looking at this, wondering why you average the full years and not just looking at this remainder 7 months. I took the same lines that you did, your same columns, 23, what if, and if you looked at the bottom 7 months and averaged them out, that would be, but anyways. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Not exactly.
You're taking the full year and averaging it based on the projections. But if you actually average just the bottom 7 months of each of those years, 21, 22, 20, you would have gotten a more accurate, but it's okay.
Well,
Because
I
looking
would
at the
average,
numbers and it changed all over the place. Like you're heavy up on the first 5 months, you're heavier than the bottom. You've got several 3s and 4s on the bottom, and you're heavy 4s, 5s, and 6s.
the reason I did that is because I wanted to have a conservative approach on the average. You never, or at least I never, in my approach on budgeted revenues, I never want to overestimate. I want to have a conservative number that I suggest to you, and that's why I would take a 12-month average, and by taking the first 5 months of actuals and then comparing it to what we received for the last 7 months of the 19, 21, and 22, I think it's a good range of and being able to average that range over those 3 years. Also, Len, the reason I wouldn't take a 7-month period is because of the quarterlies. When you receive, there's 4 months out of the year where we get much larger payments because the quarterly sales tax returns are filed. And with those 7 months would not include all the quarters. So to continue on with the revenue discussion, What Greg and I put together was we compared the 2019 budgeted revenues to the 2023 budgeted revenues. We wanted to put it into a pie chart just so you would have a visual of where the major revenue sources are. And you will see that the tax levy, the pilot agreements, the sales tax are almost the same percentages from 19 to 23. And we have 7 major sources that provides us 85% of our revenue budget. And that's our property taxes, our pilot agreements, our sales tax, our ambulance charges, our fire contract with the town, our interfund revenues, and that's where we charge the water, sewer, the library, and OPT for our general government support services, and also our state revenue sharing. Between those 7 sources, that provides 85% of our revenue budget. We have the next 5 sources, the next 5 biggest sources is our code enforcement fees, our state aid mortgage tax, our franchise tax on gross receipts, our utility gross receipts tax, and I can now say that our interest earnings will also be in one of those top categories. Our interest earnings is phenomenal right now. We're going to get probably close to $200,000 in interest this year, if not more. So, you know, then we've got our next 9, and I've got these all subtotaled for you in your detail. Our next 9.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Where is revenue from the water billing?
The water's a separate fund, and we'll get to the water fund in just a little while. And then we have a next 9, and the reason I want to just bring up the next 9 that has between $25,000 and $60,000 in our budget is that our paid parking, and we know that paid parking is a topic that we're going to be discussing. So then for the general fund expenditures, we did the same thing. We compared 2019 to 2023. Now, in your detail, on this folded page here, I provided budgets going back to 2000 by all of our major categories. This gives you a good history. It shows you the percentage makeup of the budgets. This is on page 11. Thank you. But for the visual, we again did bar charts, and we compared 19 to 23. We wanted to do pre-COVID to current. And you'll see that salaries are 39% to 40%, basically the same percentage. But where we're really getting hit expenditure-wise is in fringe benefits because of health insurance. That went from 21% to 24%. And our OPEB, which is our post-employment benefits for our retirees' health insurance, is still 7%. So if you take 40 and the 24, 64 plus 7, 71% is based for salaries, fringe benefits, and post-employment benefits.
If you're gonna get to this, please let me know. I'll retract. Is there any expectation that there's a possibility that we could potentially get into the consortium for healthcare before?
That's also going to be one of our topics for discussion.
Okay.
So yes.
That should be on the next finance committee's agenda most likely. So that's okay. One other thing I just point out on this slide is the trenches capital projects, 4% in 2019, 0% in 2023.
Yes. What has been saving us, because we haven't been able to transfer anything from our general fund to our street projects, is our state aid that we're getting from CHIPS and our state Turing aid. That has really saved us being able to fund the street projects, because right now the general fund has just not been able to do it.
Which column is our debt service? I'm having a hard time with the color coding.
The debt service is, sorry. Yeah, that's the 5 and the 4%. It's at the top of the grid. Len, if you go this way.
Yep, I got it.
So it's salaries, fringe, OPEB, equipment, contractuals, debt, interfund transfers. Just kind of go that way. And speaking of debt, that's what our next slide is. In your detail packets, I've provided what was handed out to council via email on all of the debt. It shows the purpose and it shows the outstanding balance. And that is on page 12 of your detail. I also provided what's already in your 2023 budget packets, but I just wanted it as a reminder. It shows the future debt payments for our bonds and our installment purchases. And you will see this slide, why we wanted to provide this slide was just a visual to show you that between 2023 and 2028, so for the next 5 years, our debt payments are pretty consistent from year to year. Now, this will change as we issue new debt, but as of right now, it is very consistent. Also, yes?
Parking garage on here, that's from the initial construction.
Correct. Well, not the initial construction, it was improvements. And as you bring that up, I just want to clarify for the audience, I've had a number of people say to me that we have not maintained the parking garage. And I just want to confirm that we have invested, I want to say $7 million in maintenance of the garage over the past number of years, and we still have debt on that maintenance. So the numbers prove that we have tried to maintain the garage. And I just wanted to publicly say that for the people that keep asking me.
Thank you, Jenny.
So also on this debt schedule, I updated our new bond authorizations, and Len, I put an extra column there that shows the amount of the grant that will reduce the bond authorization.
Page 13?
Page 13, yes.
15?
Page 13?
13.
Okay, so next we'll talk about fund balances. I provided you back in May a detail of the restricted reserves, which I've included in this packet, but I just wanted to summarize quickly, and I also had done it in our financial highlights a couple of weeks ago when we talked about the 2022 results. But the general fund unassigned balance is a little over $9 million. The assigned, which is the re-encumbrance of the prior year's purchase orders and also what we allocated in the budget, is about 1.3. Our restricted is just over 5 million, and our non-spendable, which is basically inventory and prepaid expenses, is about 198,000. So our total fund balance in the general fund is 15 million. That's very strong. Water fund, 519,000 is assigned. That's the official title for it, but for our discussion, it's the unrestricted portion. 522,000 is restricted, and their total fund balance is just over 1 million. The sewer fund is 100% restricted. It's just state law that the entire sewer fund's restricted. That's why I had to report it in that category. But their total fund balance is about 1.8. So I've given you the detail, and it's kind of a pre-note of what you're going to see in the audited financial statements. So the detail on page 15 of the fund balance breaks out every line of our fund balances by purpose, by restriction, and by category for every fund. So you've got that detail on page 15.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What is the permanent fund?
Permanent fund is when it's Appleball and Swart Wilcox.
Oh.
When the city received a permanent endowment, that we're never allowed to spend the principal, but we can spend the interest to maintain the Appleball. The Appleball is for non-sports events and beautification of the parks, and the Swart Wilcox is to help maintain the Swart Wilcox Fund.
Cool, thank you. And I'm sorry, the permanent fund, that was, what is, this 1.498 is the permanent, is the principal,
This is the
not
principal,
interest.
correct. The interest is reported in the special miscellaneous special revenue funds.
Okay, cool, thank you.
You're welcome. And then page 16 of your detail, as I said before, gives you the detail of the restricted reserves. Now, as in previous meetings, we have given you Waterworth presentations. We will hopefully be doing that again this year as we update numbers. I can't compliment the software well enough. We just love it. We've got staff now working on inventory of every size of the valves to say how many half-inch valves, 5/8, 3-inch, 2-inch, 6-inch, so on. We're doing inventory of analysis of, what is out there for our customers. But we want to reinforce that we recommend the long-term plan that we've presented to council previously. And this will increase the rates for 2024 again by 10%, and it's consistent with our prior discussions. And to show how the rates are starting to take effect, we've done slides here for the meter water sales for college and non-college customers, and also the sewer rents for college and non-college customers. And you will see that the revenues are starting to go up. And that is our long-term plan to slowly do a slow and steady increase of the water and sewer rents so we can make those funds stronger and be able to fund more of the infrastructure repairs needed. And in your detail,
Judy,
yes,
am I correct here from what I'm reading that we've got about 5 years
yep, and
then they'll drop back?
they'll drop, well, we wanna do 10% through 2026, 9% in 2027, 8% in 2028, and then 2%
Right.
after that. And then 1% and then 0.5%. Now, this can change. As we get more customers, and we start, if we get more customers and we're selling more water product, then the rates, we can just adjust those increases because we'll be having more sales. But as of right now, until we get those more customers and we build up the customer base for the 325 new people into the area, the apartment complexes and things like that, this can easily change. But as of right now, our recommendation for 24 is to stay with the current plan and do the 10%.
Was Carney able to give you that data for those 64 apartments so that you could do those projections for 24?
No, I have not communicated with Carney on that. And also, we can really do estimates on if it's a 1 or 2 person user, and it's minimal. It will be minimal for it's more like the 4-family household that would use more for laundry and bathing and cooking and things like that. So, but we can do a pretty good estimate.
Yeah, I just thought Carney's group owns multiple buildings that they would be able to give you an average of whether 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom.
I haven't asked him, Greg, have you spoken with him about that?
We were looking for what they would anticipate the average water
Gallon
use
use,
for.
right, gallon usage. They probably keep track of all that if they have to pay the bill.
I haven't asked that.
And so that would help you figure out more revenue sources. So just 64 apartments is quite a few apartments.
And the same thing with Spring,
24
and then,
was Springbrook,
and then Springbrook too,
So
yeah.
just a thought.
And then in your detail packet, I've given you water and sewer actual revenue and expense histories going back to 2018. So for tonight, that is what we wanted to highlight. And what we have for future discussions is obviously we have the salary study presented tonight, and so that's going to be a topic that we need to consider for the budget, health insurance options, bonding for the Market Street improvements, downtown paid parking, the fleet management, public transit, and the capital plan discussion. this slide's a little bit different than your handout, because as we worked on it a little bit more, I had already had this printed, I just didn't want to have to redo the prints. So, thank you for letting us have the difference there. And then after that, we need to schedule, obviously, future meetings. And the next one is gonna be March 8th at 5 p.m. And Greg, I don't know if you wanna talk about that, and then future meetings are gonna be determined. In your handout was kind of our draft idea, which is subject to modifying. So that's just a brief overall of all the information I've given you. And as I always say to you, this is a lot of information, it's a lot to absorb, but please study it. Any questions, email me directly, and I'll answer them to all council members in case they have the same question. And we can discuss it in further detail on August 8th.
I'm just looking at the schedule. Are we thinking are these proposed dates, or is it a hope that we meet every week through?
They're not.
Okay.
We're
Make sure I understand.
we're looking to have these be 1 hour, so it's not just for the long folks. We'll look at the schedule, we'll get with council, see what your availabilities are. They will be, specific, what do we call them? Specific in terms of?
Targeted
Targeted strategy.
Targeted.
We went through a lot of wordsmithing on this. Targeted strategy sessions is what they'll be, but about 1 hour long.
Sure.
And we'll see what the consensus of availabilities are as we move to the next numbers.
Thank you.
So,
Can I say one more thing on a personal note? Jenny, I love the binder.
Oh, I'm
Thank you
glad.
for your
You're welcome, you're welcome. I thought it was successful last year when I just did all the detailed work. And I just thought, well, let's start it a little sooner and see if people like it.
thank you very much, Jenny. Do we have any additional business? Do we have anything for council discussion?
I'd like to bring something up.
Yes.
So before the county legislator tomorrow, they have a resolution. They're requesting $621,600 to fund DSS services at Motel 88. We already have approximately 10 to 15, unofficially my count, of DSS clients that reside at Motel 88. If any of you travel up and down Chestnut Street, you'll have seen that activity. I get complaints all the time on it. And now we're looking at authorizing up to 20 of these clients for DSS at Motel 88. So that'll bring 30 to 40 of these clients in our community, in our neighborhood, and frankly, the Fifth Ward can't handle it.
It puts it right next to a vulnerable community at Chestnut Park also.
Correct. And they're already in our backyard. I've had them personally in my backyard. I get complaints that they're going through the garbage, they're throwing bricks in the street. It just goes on and on and on. We just,
Migrate down to the 6th ward.
and they get to the 6th ward, but we just, in the 5th ward, we can't handle this. It's not good for us. So I've called some of the county legislators, one called me back, I've talked to 2, 3 of them. But for us in the 5th ward, we just can't do this. And so if this is really about having community mindedness about this is a county-wide system, and this shouldn't all be put down under the 5th ward. Besides Brad Noel Fight for the Crossroads Inn down in Otsego, literally all 40 of other clients that DSS is responsible for is going to be at Motel 88. And so, obviously this has a negative effect on our college enrollment, has a negative effect on tourism, has a negative effect on economic development. And so it's not just going to be the 5th ward. This is going to affect all of us. And so I ask my fellow council to support. I plan on going tomorrow, asking that this resolution be pulled so that the county can take a more comprehensive look at solving the issue. putting all of their clients into one facility is not the answer for one neighborhood to endure this. It's not just only the nursing home, but we have a school that's right around the corner. So we have a lot of neighbors that are gonna be very, very concerned about this. Luke wants to speak.
I guess I don't quite understand why. It seems like the services are up at the county, up towards Cooperstown. Why isn't there an effort to focus on, because folks from the county have to drive down 30, 40 minutes to Oneonta. Why isn't there a push to get the services closer to the folks most in need? It seems counterintuitive that they're pushing people out to Oneonta.
You're also introducing these folks that have mental health issues and addiction issues.
Very thing that is.
You're putting them right in the epicenter of that type of activity. And so these are questions that I've asked before. So you're absolutely right, Lou. Why are they not taking a more comprehensive look at this and saying, these clients could be better served some results? And I use Brad Noel Fike as a great example. They have 21 clients that are DSS, and their system works. They don't have drug overdoses. They don't have suicides. Their model is working. The county system is not working.
So I can tell you that those conversations are happening right now. Those conversations are going to be ratcheted up as well, as a few folks are aware. Yeah, but in the meantime, I appreciate the heads up on this. I'll certainly be making my voice heard tomorrow.
Len, could you just I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, could you just reiterate, what the meeting is, when it is, who's on
It's
the
the county
committee?
board. They meet tomorrow.
Oh, they do?
And one of the resolutions,
At 10 a.m., right?
Okay, and so it's the full board?
it's a full board.
Okay.
And 4 out of the 5
Health and ed folks
are
from Oneonta, and they voted for this.
Are the city district
Really?
county board members.
Yeah. Yeah. Martini, Oliver, Basil, Brockway, and Scanlon. I called Scanlon. He said he wasn't at the meeting, but he said he's gonna ask for this resolution to be pulled tomorrow. I didn't get a hold of Brockway, didn't call me back, but I don't know why Martini, Oliver, and Basil would be forwarding this. It's very concerning.
My thought on this, of why they don't keep them up to Cooperstown, to answer your question, is you need a hotel or motel that's willing to take the money, and which hotel or motel in Cooperstown needs that kind of money?
That's exactly right, and the conversations that I alluded to are happening on with the assumption that it's not Cooperstown, but it shouldn't be Oneonta, and that determination needs to be made.
The assumption's not Cooperstown because.
It's not Cooperstown for the very reason that Dave just.
Well, the other trouble is if you put them all together in some place in the middle of nowhere,
That doesn't work.
that doesn't help either.
That's exactly right.
And so I think, not that I'm saying I want them in this location, because I remember this happened years ago, and it's right next to Greater Plains, and there were a lot of issues. But what do you do with them then? Where do you go? And
Now, it's all down to the city of
Instead
Oneonta.
of creating a community.
So
Correct.
The first step, I'm very appreciative of the fact that you identified this and brought this forward to the council. The first step is to exert whatever pressure we can, whatever information we're able to share with our local representatives, but also I'll make a couple of calls myself beyond that. If we could have this pulled, if we could have this tabled so that we have some time to start to gain some traction on some strategies, that would be a smart move. But having this pulled hopefully tomorrow would be the ideal. So
Give us a stay, correct?
Yes, that's right.
They need to be looking at this comprehensively,
Absolutely right.
and they need to be able to spread this out throughout the county. It shouldn't be just our community,
That's exactly.
especially the Fifth Ward, taking all this on.
That's exactly right. So I think we've all appreciate the heads up on it. I think all of us as council members may be able to, in some fashion, impact some of that conversation tomorrow prior to it happening. So it's an early morning phone call for a few different folks as you're able to do that.
Can somebody send an email out to those of us that can't attend this meeting to let know what happens at this meeting.
Yeah, please.
And who's gonna do that?
I'll let you know what I do at the county.
Just
Board.
county live streams, correct? They still live stream?
County is
Yeah.
live stream, yes.
Yes.
Yes. All right, thank you for bringing that up. Do we have anything else for council discussion? All right, we will need, to move to executive session to, have some conversation on our contract, negotiation. And if I can get a, motion to move to executive session. Katie, call